Chapter 530. Remember in 1 second wonderful pop-up window free reading. You've finally come back. Hua Yen came over and rolled her eyes. Then she asked, Yen Zai and others have been waiting outside the mountain gate for 2 months, but you didn't summon them. Is the rumor about the immortal cultivation sect true or false? Su Li raised her hand and showed the jade rune. It was rare for her to show off. I do it in person. There is no reason to fail. Speaking of this, she raised her eyebrows. Ask Zai and others to come back. I have subdued the immortal cultivation sect, but its nature is a bit special, and it is not suitable for other people in the sect to contact. Special? Hua Yen raised an eyebrow. Su Li said, Yen, do you believe that there are ghosts in the world? Ghost? Hua Yen was puzzled. It's nothing more than a secular saying. It's a hallucination caused by mortals being contaminated with yin qi. You and I are cultivators. How can we believe this? Su Li shook her head and smiled, saying faintly, Maybe for today's clear Qingshui circle, you are right, but there are ghosts in the world. At least there are many in the immortal cultivation sect. If you are curious, you can go and have a look. Hua Yen felt her hair stand on end, and a layer of goosebumps appeared all over her body. She laughed and scolded, I haven't seen you for 2 months, and your ghost story has improved. You can even fool me. Su Li was helpless. What I said is true. Only a ghost would believe you. Hua Yen rolled her eyes. I'm going to inform Yen Zai. As for going to the immortal cultivation sect, forget it. It's tiring enough to help you manage this small territory. Since the immortal cultivation sect has surrendered to us, we will see each other in the future. Hua Yen snorted and floated away. Su Li couldn't help laughing and ignored her. She looked down at the jade rune in her hand that had recognized her as the owner. The jade talisman was real. This had been verified by the Black Lotus, so there could be no mistake. After thinking for a while, Su Li sent a majestic thought to the jade token. Everyone come see me. In the wilderness where spiritual energy was sparse, the mountain winds howled, and all that entered their eyes was a desolate place. This was a place that cultivators wouldn't even be willing to linger for a second. On the peak of the mountain, a black lotus quietly bloomed at the corner of the beautiful woman's eyes. Her delicate face carried a coldness that did not match her age. The strong wind blew, and her white dress fluttered. It was as if she was about to ascend to heaven in the next moment. Suddenly, shwa 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 shwa. Streaks of light rapidly approached and descended, turning into 12 faces of varying heights, young and old. Without exception, all of them were at the early stage of soul formation. With this number, the immortal cultivation sect could at least enter the top 3 of the 25 sections. You're all quite punctual. Did you come together? A sweet and clear voice rang in everyone's ears. Su Li turned around with a light smile. When everyone saw that the person who had summoned them was not Hijio, but a woman, all the guesses that they had made on the way here were instantly overturned. Everyone's faces were filled with uncertainty. Su Li squinted her long and narrow eyes, and her curly eyelashes trembled. She said in a cold voice, I am your new master. Although you are controlled, you still have your wits. I like it very much. New master? The only red-dressed female cultivator among the 12 people stepped forward. Her breasts were like billowing waves, and her red lips were like fire. Her beauty was boundless. She looked up and down at Su Li's excessively young face, covered her mouth and chuckled, revealing a pair of sharp eyes. Little sister, did you steal the jade rune from somewhere? How dare you call us here? Aren't you afraid of losing your life? As soon as she said this, the 5 people behind her immediately laughed. Their eyes became unkind. Su Li couldn't help but raise her eyebrows, as if she didn't realize that she had fallen into a dangerous situation. She said with a smile, It seems that the 12 of you are not united. You are the leader of this half, so, she turned her eyes to an ordinary-looking tall and thin practitioner standing in front of her on the other side. The tall and thin practitioner's eyes flashed, and he knelt on one knee without hesitation. Niemingzhi pays respect to the new master. Ha! Before Su Li said anything, she heard the woman with makeup trembling with laughter. Niemingzhi, you are really shameless. New master? I'll let her become your dead master immediately. Before she finished her words, the woman with makeup suddenly turned cold, and her black claws instantly grabbed Su Li's head, as if the latter's skull would be crushed in the next moment. Stop! Niemingzhi shouted angrily, but his hands didn't move, and the 5 people behind him also didn't move. Su Li tilted her head and smiled. She didn't move, boom. The woman with makeup spat out blood and flew backward. She turned into a red shadow and shot out like a cannonball. She hit a long pit and didn't stop until she hit several feet into the mountain wall. Her whole body hung on the mountain wall, and her pneuma instantly weakened. Everyone behind the female practitioner with makeup changed their expressions. What happened just now? Niemingzhi swallowed his saliva and said loudly, Master's cultivation is unparalleled and she is mighty. Before he finished his words, Su Li waved her hand, and the latter also spat out blood and flew backward. He was swept out dozens of feet away. Now, the other 5 people who were still glad that they stood on the right side also turned pale and froze in the same place. The female practitioner with makeup got up first. Her clothes were ragged, and her face was swollen. She kept coughing up blood. Niemingzhi crawled for a long time, but he couldn't get up. He was more seriously injured than the female practitioner with makeup. You two, one is a brainless fool, and the other is a fence-sitter. I don't like either of you. Su Li pinched the jade token with both hands and shook it. Her tone was full of disgust. If you hadn't lurked in the 25 sects for a long time, I wouldn't have kept you alive. You should be glad that you still have some value. As soon as she said that, an invisible pressure shrouded them. Everyone lowered their heads and didn't dare to look directly at Su Li, especially those who laughed just now. They were afraid that they would be seriously injured in an instant like Niemingzhi and Su Li. Su Li raised her eyebrows. Someone come out to speak. Everyone was stunned. One of the people of Mingzhi's faction stood out and decisively knelt down. Wang Yuan, the law enforcement elder of Wanli sect, greets the new master. With him taking the lead, the rest of the people immediately knelt down one by one. Hu Dao, the 4th elder of the inner branch of Chuanyan sect, greets the new master. Cheng Shihai, the 3rd elder of the inner branch of Tianhu Valley, greets the new master. Su Li nodded gently and wrote down everyone's names one by one. Then she flicked her fingers, and 2 green lights went into the bodies of the 2 people who were still kneeling under the mountain wall. Which sect are you from? The female practitioner with makeup immediately felt that her injury was mostly healed. She was in awe and bowed down respectfully. Master, I am Mu Hong, the deputy lord of Wanli sect. No wonder you dare to fight as soon as you meet. It turns out that you are in a high position in the 3rd sect. Su Li ridiculed. Mu Hong immediately lowered her head in shame. I dare not. He was reckless. Why don't you dare? I think you are very daring. Su Li teased and her eyes fell on Niemingzhi. So, you must be the senior of Liang's sect, the 4th sect. I dare not. Niemingzhi's scalp was numb. He quickly lowered his head and said in a timid voice, I am the deputy lord of Liang's sect. I have a little power in my hand. I am willing to go through fire and water for you. That's enough. I don't like hypocrisy. Su Li waved her hand and looked indifferent. I don't care whether you are sincere or hypocritical. You are in a high position all year round, and it is normal for you to have some thoughts. But in front of me, Su Li said coldly, you'd better put it away. Everyone was shocked and kept quiet out of fear. In 8 years, I will unify the Jiuzhou region. At that time, if you can still obey me, I don't mind making each of you a lord. Su Li casually dropped a bomb in everyone's heart. Mu Hong's first thought was that she didn't believe it. But when she thought that the female practitioner in front of her could even snatch things from ghosts, she couldn't help but hesitate. There are not many things you need to do. When you go back, monitor the whereabouts of the most powerful people in the sect, and then send a message to me. The second is to prepare for the attack on Yushu sect and Zihan sect. Niemingzhi nodded frequently. Then he hesitated for a moment and asked what everyone was thinking. The other 11 sects? Su Li smiled. Of course, I will act with you. Everyone was shocked again. In this way, The woman in front of them already had a total of 23 sects in her hands, which was much bigger than the Immortal Cultivation sect. Even the Immortal Cultivation sect has become hers. Mu Hong's pupils shrank suddenly. She nodded without hesitation. Even the horrible ghosts in the Yin Mountain were cleaned up by her. What were the other sects? In her opinion, Yushu sect and Zihan sect were not as good as the Immortal Cultivation sect. I like your attitude. Su Li nodded with satisfaction and smiled. Mu Hong's body was still aching. At this moment, when she heard this sentence, she felt flattered for a while. She had a better understanding of the temperamental character of the new master. We'll go back. I will wait for your news. Don't let me down. Su Li waved her hand. After the crowd bowed, they flew away one after another. Finally, only Mu Hong and Yemingzhi were left. They looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The original hostile relationship disappeared without a trace. They originally insisted on betraying Hijio. Now, a more powerful master suddenly changed, who was so powerful that they were desperate. Any faction was useless. The two put on new clothes from their universe rings, bowed and left. Su Li counted on her fingers and found it only took her about 10 minutes. It's almost time. After dealing with the old bastards of the 12 sects, only the main course is left. Su Li's eyes were cold. Little Su Li, don't be careless. The ghosts of the Immortal Cultivation sect are restrained by you. 4 ordinary practitioners, when Yuan Qing and Yin are equivalent to half a junior emperor, but for you, they are just a little higher than the nature's test. If you fight with Zihan sect and Yushu sect at the same time, you can't defeat 4 people in a junior emperor. Black Lotus couldn't help but remind her. Recently, Su Li had made too big a step. It only took 2 months to solve the problem that should have taken several years. He was really afraid that Su Li would be too excited and directly run to death. Su Li smiled leisurely. How could it be? I am very afraid of death. I will go back and rest for 2 days. I will be busy later. As soon as she finished speaking, a breeze blew. There was no one on the mountaintop. Chapter 5:31. 34 Chinese Network, in 1 second wonderful pop-up window free reading. After returning to Ni sect again, Su Li rarely had leisure time. She took out the harvest in Jiuli region and cooked a few delicacies for Hua Yan and others. Although the memory of Yan Zai, Dongfang Wuxue and others in the reincarnation mirror did not fade, they never thought that Su Li would still be willing to cook after returning to Qingshui Circle. Then, they ate to their heart's content. After all, they didn't have this blessing in the world of the reincarnation mirror. As for LVU and others who didn't know Su Li's origin, they were even more amazed. Su Li was happy to see everyone's reaction. After a few days, they were finally interrupted by the arrival of a person. The main hall covered with green tiles on the top of the mountain was open on all sides. The breeze was gentle, and it was comfortable and pleasant. The woman with heavy makeup carefully walked into the main hall. Looking at the casual and simple layout in the main hall, she felt out of place and couldn't help but feel surprised. How could the new master, who was so overbearing and surly, live in such a refined and elegant place? What are you thinking about? The woman with heavy makeup heard the familiar voice and immediately shivered. She turned to look at the small door connected to the back hall and saw Su Li coming with a smile. Different from the fierce dress of the heavy soul black robe in the past, Su Li wore a pure white gauze dress. She walked silently and looked like a gentle fairy who was above the world. The woman with heavy makeup had already learned what kind of fierce face was hidden under the delicate appearance, so she immediately knelt down. Slave Mu Hong pays respect to the master. Su Li nodded gently and opened her red lips slightly. In the future, you don't need to call yourself slave or master. Just call me master. Since you come to me, you must have gained something, right? Mu Hong only thought it was a means for the new master to win people's hearts. She was calm and quickly replied, Master? I have stayed in Wanli sect for hundreds of years and only met the Grand Elder once. After that, the Grand Elder practiced in isolation. If it is not related to the survival of the sect, he will not come out. There is no Elders' Union in Wanli sect, and the real power is in the hands of the deputy lords and the Lord. I am the chief deputy lord, so I only need to control the Lord to control the Wanli sect. Su Li nodded with appreciation in her eyes. It's rare for you to be so frank when you are in this position. Mu Hong lowered her head and her eyes flashed. Then she said, Certainly you're wrong. You're a strong cultivator. The cultivation world is a place where the strong prey on the weak. If you're not strong enough, you can only be trampled on. Although I, Mu Hong, am arrogant, I respect the strong. You are even more powerful than the Grand Elder of Wanli sect. With you as my backer, why wouldn't I be happy? Su Li chuckled and said meaningfully, I hope you are telling the truth. Mu Hong's heart tightened. She raised her head and said, I'm here to show my loyalty. Although the 12 of us are the pawns of the immortal cultivation sect, we have already formed our own camps. I have also placed a lot of spies in the other 11 sections. Niemingzhi seems to have a sign of betrayal. At present, I don't know whether he has exposed your existence. This matter is critical. You must deal with it carefully. There's such a thing? Su Li still smiled. I'll arrange someone to deal with this matter. You stay for a while, and I'll send someone to meet you. Then, Su Li waved her hand and walked away. I still have a dish on the stove. It can't be burned. Seeing that the new master didn't seem to take her words seriously at all, Mu Hong's heart sank. She suddenly began to doubt whether she had taken the right step. It's no wonder. Anyone who controls the power of the 12 sects will inevitably be proud and look down on other sections. But the distribution of the power of the 25 sects is uneven. If Yushu sect knew in advance and cooperated with Niemingzhi, Mu Hong was secretly disappointed. Not long after, strange footsteps sounded. Yan Zai walked over with a cold expression. A familiar pressure came over to Mu Hong, which made her feel a chill in her heart and gave birth to a little hope. The person who met her was not a simple person. Burp. An ear-piercing burp broke the silence, and Mu Hong's solemn expression instantly became sluggish. Yan Zai was speechless and looked embarrassed. Damn it, the dishes you made are so delicious that I accidentally ate more. LVU, who was observing in secret, almost laughed out loud. You called that a little bit more? If you hadn't eaten indiscriminately, the master wouldn't have made another pot. Ahem. With a cough, Yan Zai forcibly covered up the embarrassment and said coldly, Follow me. Mu Hong followed Yan Zai to a side hall. The decoration of the hall was extremely simple. There were shelves on all sides of the walls, on which a large number of jade slips were piled. They were wrapped by the isolation tactical matrix. In the center, there was a set of wooden tables and chairs. Sit down. Mu Hong sat down and was about to emphasize the importance of Niemingzhi's matter. Yan Zai waved his hand and said, Don't worry. I've got the news from the master about what you said. It's not urgent. The Lord of Liang sect has been out recently. As you said, Niemingzhi will definitely choose to contact the first elder of Liang sect. I'll ask Dong Minglan. Mu Hong was stunned. Dong Minglan? Wasn't she the first elder of Liang sect? Ask her directly. Before she could ask, Yan Zai had already flicked out a crystal-clear communication talisman and disappeared into the void. Not long after, a similar communication jade talisman was sent back, and a familiar voice sounded through the jade talisman. This female cultivator's voice, which was very majestic in Mu Hong's memory, was gentle at the moment. Deputy Lord Yen, it's true. Niemingzhi has been controlled by me. I will never let him affect the master's plan. So, how should we deal with Niemingzhi? After hearing this, Mu Hong finally understood. No wonder the new master was not anxious at all. It turned out that Liang sect had been infiltrated long ago. Dong Minglan is the master's person. Then Liang sect. Mu Hong remembered what Su Li said before and couldn't help but ask, didn't the master say that she only controlled 11 sects? Yan Zai raised his eyebrows, which was very similar to Su Li's usual way. The master did completely control only 11 sects, but she never said that we only infiltrated 11 sections. Mu Hong was shocked by the huge amount of information and couldn't breathe smoothly. Her pupils shrank and she tentatively asked, Then the lord of my Wanli sect? Yen Zai smiled. Not yet. Apart from you, there are only a few mediocre vice sect masters who have submitted. Just, Mu Hong felt cold in her heart. Could she believe this sentence? She thought she had seen everything about the new master, but after coming today, she found that what she saw turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. It's ridiculous that I was wavering before. Mu Hong thought with lingering fear. If she was not firm, she might end up like Niemingzhi. Relax. Yen Zai smiled and began to comfort Mu Hong very familiarly. The master is not as terrible as you think. Although you are controlled by the master, you still have your sanity. You are lucky. As long as you don't betray us, there are many benefits. You will know in the future. Mu Hong forced a smile. She nodded, but her pale face still betrayed her inner uneasiness. Yen Zai was not in a hurry. He had done this kind of work most of these years, and he had long been familiar with it. He let Mu Hong go back first and find a chance to trick the lord out. When the Wanli sect fell into his hands, Mu Hong couldn't do anything. Thinking of this, Yen Zai reached out and waved his hand. A register flew out of the shelf, on which there were densely packed names. Yen Zai turned to the last page and started to write. Mu Hong Huashan Realm. Although she has some courage, her state of mind is deviated. She can barely be regarded as the third class. Whether she will be cultivated in the future depends on observation. After drawing 3 red circles, Yen Zai threw away the pen, stood up, and rubbed his stomach, muttering, "Working is really exhausting. Forget it, I'll go to Sir's place and have a bowl of rice, just one bowl." After Mu Hong went back, she tried her best to trick the lord of the Wanli sect out. With the cooperation from both inside and outside, it didn't take much effort for Su Li to take over the sect. It was worth mentioning that the lord of the Wanli sect was tough and refused to yield. Su Li could only make him a member of the Soul Tactics. When Mu Hong saw this scene, she became even more terrified. The thoughts in her mind had long been thrown out of her mind. With Mu Hong taking the lead, the remaining 10 people followed her example and tried their best to trick the lord of their sect. They even competed with each other in speed, for fear that they would be at a disadvantage because they were too slow. As for Niemingzhi, he was naturally in the hands of Dong Minglan and went to the place where he should go. Deputy Lord Nie has not returned since he went down the mountain. Now his soul tablet is broken. I am afraid that he has met with an accident. Jiuzhou region is in troubled times. Don't spread this matter to prevent accidents. Dong Minglan said cautiously. All the elders of the Liang sect nodded one after another. The lord sighed in his heart, but he agreed on the surface. What Minglan said is right. The Jiuzhou region is in a precarious situation. We should integrate the fighting power of the sect in case of a sudden war. As soon as the words came out, Dong Minglan narrowed her eyes and nodded with a smile. Lord, you are far-sighted. We will obey you. Seeing that the 2 big shots of the sect all nodded, the rest of the elders naturally did not dare to raise any objections and voted in favor. Your Excellency, it doesn't matter if you can't understand me now. I have chosen a clear path. From now on, you and I are in the same boat. Please take care of me. Hearing the transmitted sound from the woman beside him, the Lord closed his eyes and fell into complete silence. Since then, in just 8 months, Su Li had taken action 12 times. She completely eliminated the remaining stubborn forces and completely unified the 23 sects of the Jiuzhou region into a force. And Mu Hong finally knew that there were 19 sects that the new master had infiltrated. Even without their appearance, the new master would do this, but it would take a little more time. Look, Yen, I thought it would take 10 years, but it only took me 3 years to achieve this. Su Li sat by the lake in the back mountain and smiled like a flower. Hua Yen fiddled with the spiritual plant in her hand, looked up and smiled helplessly. She didn't speak. She was afraid that Su Li would be arrogant if she praised her. However, there was still unconcealable amazement in Hua Yan's eyes. Her bosom friend could always accomplish miracles that ordinary people could not imagine. When will we take action next? Su Li stopped smiling and her dark eyes were dim. Don't worry. I will practice in isolation soon. Hua Yen was stunned, and then she smiled brightly. Her usual gentle tone revealed a rare murderous intent. The day you come out of isolation is the day we attack. Chapter 5:32. Book Maze Lu Org, Wonderful Pop-Up Window Free Reading. In a cave 100 meters underground in the depths of an unknown barren mountain in Jiuzhou region, it was so dull that it was difficult to breathe. Su Li glanced around at the seclusion retreat that she had opened up for half a day. Although she should not be disturbed when she practiced in the back mountain of Ni sect, she would never pin her hopes on the word should because of her cautious temperament. Without thinking too much, Su Li narrowed her beautiful eyes, and her eyes became sharp. She stretched out her right hand and drew a circle. Quietly, the azure blue luster crossed the dazzling trace along her fingertips, and the starry gate appeared again. Compared with the previous 2 times, Su Li's heart was extremely calm. This time, she was more prepared than ever. Her actual combat power had already exceeded her Jindan stage cultivation by 3 levels, and she also had several means to help her. If even she couldn't pass this threshold, then the cultivators who chose this path in ancient times would have died long ago. Don't be careless. Even a lion fights a rabbit with all its strength. I don't need to remind you that you have grown to this level. Su Li nodded gently and took off the treasures such as Black Lotus Ring. She said in a rare serious tone, "Take care of the guys in Song Lei's cave. I will be back soon." Black Lotus rolled his eyes as a response. Su Li smiled slightly, and without hesitation, she turned around and disappeared into the starry gate. It was cold rain in the early morning on the long street of Yunjing. The cold rain fell on Su Li's dazed face, which made her shiver involuntarily. Then she came to her senses. Su Li struggled to climb up from the collapsed and broken wall. She saw the familiar low bluish-gray brick wall, the dilapidated courtyard, the bright bloodstains on the grass, and the approaching figure. Her pupils suddenly shrank. You can still keep so calm in the face of death. You do have some skills. No wonder the young master will be fascinated by you and fall in love with you. Ling Xian, who was supposed to die, walked out gracefully, and her tone was as familiar as ever. This unforgettable familiar scene had long been engraved in her soul. Even if she already knew that everything was an illusion, she could not erase it. It was on this day that her life had undergone earth-shaking changes. I clearly entered the starry gate. Why do you want me to see these? Could it be that the Chuangxing path this time is an inner demon? Su Li thought gloomily. Ling Xian had approached. The 4th elder of the Yinma cult should appear next, and then Su Yu should appear. However, what happened next was far beyond her imagination. Stop, Ling Xian. Along with a furious roar, a figure at the end of the long street approached from afar. In a few flashes, he had arrived. Ling Li picked up the petite girl who was as light as a feather and held her tightly in his arms. His spiritual power poured into her body as if it was free. He always had a gentle face, but the anxiety in his eyes could burn through the sky. Sect Master? The 4th elder walked over and was stunned. What's going on? He looked at Ling Xian inquiringly. However, Ling Xian, who was aggressive just now, was avoiding his eyes. It seemed that she wanted to leave. The 4th elder was no fool, and he immediately understood what was going on. His gaze turned cold, and he moved his feet, faintly sealing off the latter's movements. It's my carelessness. Looking at the girl who seemed to have fainted in his arms, Ling Li's eyes were full of self-blame. After confirming that Su Li's life was not in danger, he raised his head and looked at Ling Xian. His face instantly became cold, and his lips were like a thin piece of paper, like a cold blade. You are very good. Ling Xian took a deep breath and said righteously, I did it for the young master. You are the chosen one. How noble you are. How can you marry such a commoner? That's simply tarnishing you. Ling Mo, slap her. Slap. Ling Mo withdrew his hand expressionlessly. Looking at Ling Xian's astonished face, he said lightly, You stink. The stench of jealousy could even be smelled by him. Ling Xian's face turned pale, and her lips trembled. She stared at Ling Li and wanted to say something, but finally, She said nothing and left in a panic. Child? Ling Imo walked to Ling Li and asked him. The meaning in his eyes was self-evident. Ling Li closed his eyes and felt the softness in his arms. He was more and more angry, but his mind was extremely sober. He said calmly, "Fourth Elder, do you know your crime?" At this moment, Fourth Elder had received the sound transmitted by Third Elder, and he was extremely regretful. Hearing Ling Li's words, he immediately lowered his head. "I listened to the holy girl's lies, and I know my crime." Then, the holy girl Ling Xian tried to kill Madam Hierarch but failed. She has committed a heinous crime. You will be responsible for hunting her down, regardless of life or death. Fourth Elder was shocked. He looked up and saw the soberness and firmness in Ling Li's eyes. He thought of the sound transmitted by Third Elder and made up his mind. Sir, in the east courtyard of the Ling mansion, there were all kinds of holy things for healing injuries in the large and exquisite wing room. I really can't eat anymore. On the bed, Su Li leaned on the porcelain pillow and reluctantly pushed away the tonic sent to her mouth. But Ling Li pulled a long face and was stubborn like a smelly and hard stone. You haven't recovered yet. Doctors don't treat themselves. You have to listen to me. Su Li's eyes softened, and she finally picked up the soup and drank it. Ling Li's face became better, and the love in his eyes almost melted. He said softly, "Good girl, I will deal with the chores of the cult, and I will come to accompany you soon." Su Li nodded. Ling Li helped her lie down, and then he left reluctantly. The room was quiet again. Su Li was silent for a moment in front of the pink gauze curtain above her head. Then she reluctantly sat up, opened the lining, and gently pressed the scab wound. Hiss! The pain came to her nerves. Su Li took a light breath, and her eyes were full of self-mockery. What is this? The other possibility of time may be better? Then what will happen when this world is broken? Su Li pondered. She stayed in the Ling mansion for 2 months for healing. In addition to dealing with the arrival of Lord Rui, Su Yu and others, she gained something. According to what Black Lotus said, although the test of Chuangxing Path is difficult, it is not difficult for me. But I haven't found a way to break the deadlock so far. It is likely that something unexpected happened in Chuangxing Path. Everything that has happened in the past 2 months feels like it's real. It's like there really is such a branch of time, and I'm like I've taken over another branch of time to exist, and I still have my original memories. So, if I stay here, what will happen? What will be the final ending of me in this branch of time? Countless thoughts flashed through her mind, and she finally quieted down. Without the fateful twist, everything in this branch of time was developing in a good direction. Su Li thought for a long time and did not touch those who had life rings. In this timeline, she should not know such things as life rings. The consciousness in Mei Ruhan's mind was also deliberately ignored by her. She wanted to see how far the test of Chuangxing Path could go. With the secret help of the Linli building, the Yinma cult soon controlled nearly 80% of the forces of Dahan. The Dongfang family was a mere figurehead. With the help of the Wanjian sect, the Dongfang family in the spiritual circle could not play a big role. Finally, after weighing the gains and losses, the Yinma cult gave up the arrangement of the Dongfang family. As a result, Dahan finally came to the end. The change of dynasty. Ling Li, the useless third son of the Ling family, turned out to be the hierarch of the Yinma cult. He ascended the throne and changed the name of the country to Ling. Su Li, the owner of the Linli building, had great foresight and unparalleled wisdom. She was conferred the title of Empress Su, the motherly model of the world. The world was shocked. The whole secular world and the martial arts circle were in shock for several years. The light in Fang Yuan's eyes also completely dimmed in these years, leaving only a faint warmth. It's good that I can help you manage the Linli building. In the Linli building, Fang Yuan held a glass of wine and looked at the towering palace in the city center. He smiled bitterly. In Chuxiu Palace, Su Li, wearing a phoenix crown, was bright and charming. She held a brush in her hand and wrote a word on the rice paper. 6. Mammy Li was confused. She still used the previous title, Miss. What does it mean? Su Li closed her eyes and didn't say anything. She had been in this tributary of time for nearly 6 years. In the first few years, she acted according to her original temperament, and everything ran normally. But in order to make things go smoothly, she couldn't hold back and predicted the future several times. It also included that she frightened Jing Xian with words, so that she took the initiative to take action and fooled the existence of the outside world. But in the end, the truth could not be concealed. A false idea filled her mind. Even if she was paralyzed for 6 years, she was still sober, even more sober than ever. In the past 2 years, although she tried her best to cover it up, the premonition that the truth would be revealed became stronger. Li, why are you in a daze again? What are you thinking about? Ling Li, dressed in a dragon robe, strode with a smile. On his handsome face, he had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He slightly raised the corners of his mouth, exuding high spirits. In these years he stayed with Su Li, but the love in his heart did not fade away. Instead, it became purer and purer like wine. There was no room for any other woman in his eyes. Su Li raised her head. At this moment, suddenly, boom! There was a loud explosion in the sky, as if bombarding on everyone's mind. Then Su Li felt a heat on her wrist, and the life ring, which had been lurking and motionless, lit up. She raised her head and saw Ling Li, who was full of astonishment, quickly faded away. She also heard the majestic words. The time is up. The trial is over. Come out. As soon as the voice fell, Su Li felt that the memory in her mind began to fade. The misery of the first life and the glory of the second life disappeared one after another. Su Li pursed her lips. Even if I have worked hard for 6 years, my memory will disappear after I go out. It seems that I will continue to be a slaughtered animal? While talking to herself, she laughed in a low voice. After all, it's just an illusion. I still can't escape the old way of being used. So, it's not a bad thing to break the life ring in advance and put myself in a desperate situation. Su Li raised her head and stared at the sky, as if she was looking at the unknown existence again. I have seen enough. Crash. The sky suddenly broke. Chapter 5, 33. 34 Chinese Net, in 1 second wonderful pop-up window free reading. Even though the Hall of the Holy Girl had not been opened for nearly 1,000 years, the air was still not dull and exuded a faint fragrance. In the large quiet room, Su Li opened her eyes and looked down at the familiar white dress. The reincarnation mirror lay quietly in her hand, which was cold to the touch. Because of the role of the life ring, her memory should go back to before she entered the reincarnation mirror. But there seemed to be some accident, and her soul hidden in the depths was still very sober. Although the illusion of Chuangxing Path is very real, it can't affect me. Su Li looked at the details of the reincarnation mirror in her hand, which was the same as in her memory. That is to say, the dangerous test for me is actually too simple. Suddenly, the door of the Hall of the Holy Girl was pushed open on both sides, and a weak figure hurried in. There was anxiety in the gentle female voice. Su Li raised her head and saw a pair of eyes full of worry and distress. She was pleasantly surprised, and her face became gentle. She called softly, "Master?" "Li!" Emo Qin shouted with pity. She came to kneel down and buried Su Li in her chest. Her voice was choked with sobs. "It's over. Everything is over. As your master, I'm sorry." Su Li leaned quietly in the arms of the woman, and her eyes were gentle. She sighed softly, "Master, I also want to spend more time with you, but there is not enough time." "Li, what are you talking about?" Emo Qin was stunned and held Su Li's face. "Those strong enemies no longer force us." "What do you mean there is not enough time? Are you hurt? Let me see." Emo Qin's face changed slightly, and she became anxious, but was pushed away by Su Li. "Everything you demonstrate now is just what I want to see, so all you can do is steal the picture in my memory and outline a false picture. It's too low level." Su Li's words were sarcastic, but Emo Qin was more and more confused, and her tone became more anxious and worried. "You little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Everything is true." You have come out of the suffering reincarnation mirror. You are now the Yushu holy girl. You are the first senior of the young generation of Yushu sect. It doesn't matter if you want to continue lying to me. Su Li smiled slightly. Since the foundation of this world is my belief, then I only need to deceive myself. She stretched out her hand and pointed to Emo Chin's stunned face. Emo Chin, there are countless spies in Jojo region. You have been lurking around me and observing me. Which holy sect are you from? Emo Chin was stunned. Su Li increased the suspicion in her heart and narrowed her eyes. Let me think about it. Those who can be with me must be at least one of the 4 holy sects, right? Coupled with the fact that he was a lackey of the Fate ancestor, it would be even easier to screen. Do I need to explain? My dear master. Emo Chin took a few steps back, and her face kept changing. Finally, she was completely gloomy and sighed. Su Li, isn't it good to live a muddled life? If it's what you want, then it's not good. Su Li smiled brightly with bright eyes and white teeth. Holy sects, Fate ancestor, all of you deserve to die. Buzz, the picture in front of her fluctuated for a moment and then returned to stability. Emo Chin's face became cold. Self-consciousness awakened again? How troublesome. Looks like I can only brainwash them again. She reached out to grab Su Li. Her cultivation was far beyond that of ordinary practitioners in Jindan realm. Su Li tilted her head and smiled, whispering, Now, I am the strongest in Qingshui circle. Boom! Emo Chin mixed with the fragments of the main hall and shot backward, smashing a large group of palaces. Yushu sect was in chaos in an instant. Fragments. Su Li flashed out of the fragments of the palace. Looking at the chaotic picture, her smile became more and more intense. If I think it really exists, then it is true. Now my cultivation can only be resisted by Fate ancestor. I slaughtered the 25 sects in Jojo region, including the immortal cultivation sect. I killed all the holy sects in Qingshui circle, and blood flowed like a river. Lives were plunged into misery and suffering. Even the 4 peak holy sects were no match for me. Xinglu, you evolve a Fate ancestor for me. Let me see what kind of monster the Fate ancestor is. As Su Li finished her words, the picture turned faster and faster. In the end, it finally couldn't keep up with the speed of Su Li's weaving and turned into chaos. Stop. The deafening majestic voice bombarded Su Li's mind. Immediately, the chaos in front of her receded and turned into clarity. What entered his eyes was a familiar starry sky, as well as a graceful pink-clothed woman with a blurry face sitting on a throne. Su Li looked over. The corner of the lips under the veil of the glamorous woman seemed to move a little, and the voice sounded again. To be able to pass my test at such a young age. You not bad. What's your name? Junior is just a nobody. My name is not worth mentioning. Senior is too kind. Su Li's eyes flashed, and she replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. The term, Star Hall, flashed in her memory. She didn't forget the last encounter in Star Hall. The admiration in the cold and elegant woman's eyes became more and more intense. In order to annoy her sworn enemy Yi Chushue, she casually arranged a killing trap for Su Li. Unexpectedly, she not only failed to kill the girl, but also let her get out of trouble in just 6 years, which really surprised her. Because of this, she took the test token from her subordinates and came to Star Path to see Su Li in person. Yi Chushue appreciated this girl, and it was not without reason. No wonder she took action personally last time. However, this time I robbed her. The cold and elegant woman narrowed her eyes and thought. She deliberately omitted the danger of the test and said in a rare gentle tone, Are you willing to be my disciple? Su Li showed a puzzled look in time. Senior is? The cold and elegant woman chuckled softly. Do you still remember the danger you encountered in Star Hall last time? If I didn't help you, you wouldn't be able to get to the present so easily. Su Li suddenly realized, and said in surprise, It turns out to be Senior Star Hall. She deliberately flattered, but her heart was cold. Although the last contact with the woman from Star Hall was extremely short, She was definitely not the same person as the cold and elegant woman she saw today. This woman would never expect that the woman from Star Hall not only saved her last time, but also answered her questions and had a short communication. This person pretended to be that female senior. Is it because she likes me and wants to take me as her disciple in advance? Su Li's thoughts flashed, but she had a premonition that it was absolutely not like this. The test of Star Path didn't leave a way out at all. If she hadn't been strangely able to keep sober all the time, she would definitely be lost in it. But even if she could keep the advantage, it still took her 6 years to break through. This person is malicious. Su Li's eyes were slightly fixed, but she didn't show it on the surface. She said respectfully, "Senior, can you answer my doubts? What is Star Hall? Last time I had a glimpse of it, it really made me confused. What's so difficult about it?" The cold and elegant woman saw that Su Li didn't seem to notice the trick at all. When she thought of the future when she met Yi Chu Xue, she felt a burst of joy in her heart. She said directly, "As long as you take me as your disciple, one day you will find that the so-called Qingshui Circle is just a backwater place. There are many ignorant people." Su Li had been in contact with Qimo Circle, so she naturally knew the truth that there was always someone better than her. But she still pretended to be shocked and didn't understand anything to attract the cold and elegant woman to continue talking. Star Hall is a big force in the starry sky. It is above many cultivation worlds. You should know that the starry sky and eternity are the ultimate pursuit of practitioners. You are like a frog at the bottom of a well, only in a small world. How dare you call yourself a practitioner? The cold and elegant woman snorted coldly, and her tone became gentle again. "So, if you take me as your disciple, you will reach the sky in one step and enter the big force in the starry sky. From then on, you will get rid of the low-level struggle and have the qualification to strive for a higher goal." "Senior, you're right." Su Li's eyes were full of excitement and yearning. "I am willing to take you as my teacher." Ah! When the cold and elegant woman heard this, she finally couldn't help laughing out loud. "Good little girl, congratulations on making the best choice in your life." After that, she made a gesture, and a palm-sized jade box appeared from the starry sky and flew into Su Li's hand. "This is the elixir and mental method I prepared for you. Due to the rules of the Star Path, I can't give you too much, but these are enough for you to practice to the realm of human immortals. When you step into the realm of human immortals, you can break the nothingness and pinch this method. I will only send someone to pick you up." Su Li took the jade box with both hands and lowered her head. Her voice was full of surprise and joy. "I will follow your instructions, Master." "Ah, very good. I look forward to your arrival." The cold and elegant woman waved her sleeves and disappeared in the Star Path. Soon after, the Star Gate appeared. Su Li took a deep look at the direction where the cold and elegant woman disappeared, and the expression on her face instantly disappeared. She put away the jade box and stepped into the Star Gate without stopping. Deep in the ground, the Star Gate flashed, and Su Li's figure reappeared. Black Lotus Ring, who had completely given up hope, suddenly quivered and shot out of the soil, falling into Su Li's hand. "Su Li, you are still alive. Do you know how long it has been?" 6 years. A whole 6 years. I almost went to find the next master. Su Li frowned and pressed Black Lotus back into the ring space. She said coldly, "Don't talk nonsense. Is there any accident in the arrangement of Jojo region?" Black Lotus calmed down a little and felt that the force above his head was less. He came out and shook his head. "For a practitioner, 6 years is nothing. Fortunately, you didn't mention the time of practicing in isolation. Everything in Inai sect is normal." Su Li breathed a sigh of relief and immediately told Black Lotus about her encounter on the Chuangxing path. Black Lotus was instantly stunned. There really is a Star Hall. You knew it last time, but you didn't tell me." Black Lotus was very sad and indignant. He was silent for a moment and said, "However, I always feel something is wrong. Do you really want to learn the practice method of the Star Hall?" "Just for a while." Su Li sealed the jade box and put it into the universe ring. She said with a faint smile, how can I practice something of unknown origin? Chapter 5:34. In the vast and borderless beautiful mountains and rivers, there was only a pink palace dotted among them. In the huge hall, the pink gauze curtain fluttered in the wind, and the smooth and clean ground was like a mirror, reflecting another world. On a soft chair covered with pure white fur, a woman in a pink gauze dress was lying lazily. Her eyes were half closed, and her breasts were half exposed. She was humming softly, and she was in a very good mood. At her feet, a handsome young man in a pink robe was carefully massaging her toes with a focused look. After a while, he raised his eyes and said in a serious tone, "Master, do you really want to accept that ignorant female practitioner from the small world as an apprentice?" The woman half opened her eyes, and there seemed to be a pink mist rippling in her eyes. In the eyes of the pink-robed young man, it became a soul-stirring beauty. She snorted softly and said with a smile, "How could I like that little girl? She is the person that Yi Chushua likes. I'm disgusted." The sense of crisis in the eyes of the pink-robed young man faded away, and he smiled a little more. Then he asked in confusion, "Then you clearly gave her the mental method elixir? Who said that was the mental method elixir?" The woman's tone turned cold. "That's just a trick I left. If that little girl really has the ability to come to me, I'm afraid that she has become half a puppet of mine unknowingly. If I ask her to die, she won't even blink. At that time, I must humiliate Yi Chushua once." Speaking of this, the woman smiled again. "That scene, just thinking about it makes me happy." The pink-robed young man also laughed when he heard the words, "Master, no matter how angry Yi Chushua is, she will definitely not dare to do it." The woman snorted proudly, "Of course, this is my bedroom. Even if she was promoted by Master Hong Luo and became the deputy hall master, the rules of the Star Hall still have to be followed." Before she finished her words, her face suddenly changed. Boom! Without warning, a sword light brighter than the starlight fell into the center of the pink palace like a meteorite. Accompanied by the screams of many male servants, the pink palace's restriction runes didn't stop it even for a moment. In the blink of an eye, it became a ruin under the impact of the sword light. The arc-shaped shock wave spread, the wind raged in the mountains and forests, and countless trees collapsed. One sword destroyed the palace. A figure flashed, and the woman in white suddenly appeared in the void. She held a sword in one hand and slowly descended. Her blue eyes were like ice that could not be melted. "Shin Chunshui, get out here." The pink figure instantly shot out from the ruins, followed by the huge pink skull behind her. In the blink of an eye, the sky was illuminated pink. "You destroyed my palace and killed my concubine. First, snow. I'll tear you to shreds." Yi Chushua's blue eyes with sword light suddenly become serious. She doesn't step back but uses her sword to block. The skeleton magic weapon and the flying sword have collided for thousands of times in the blink of an eye. The shock wave brought by the collision soon sweeps away the beautiful mountains and rivers into bare barren hills. Shen Chunshui became more and more anxious. He spread his fingers and a pink skeleton zither appeared out of thin air. Seeing this, Yi Chushua frowned. She let go of the sword in her hand and let it return to her body automatically. Another icy giant sword slowly rose from behind. "Shen Chunshui, you hurt my concubine, and I destroyed your palace. Now we are even." Yi Chushua's tone was calm, without the tension before the war. "You have to think about the consequences of using the forbidden weapon in the Star Hall." Shen Chuanshui's pink eyes were full of anger and madness. "Yi Chushua, only you are allowed to disturb my meditation, but I am not allowed to hurt you. There is no such rule in this world." She flicked her two fingers, and the skeleton zither in her hand made a series of strange sounds. "Even if I am punished to go to the small world, I will seriously injure you today. 10,000 years. You are so stubborn." Yi Chushua shook her head. The giant sword behind her was shining with blue light. There was pity in her eyes. "Even if the grade of your forbidden weapon is higher than mine, it depends on who uses it." Shen Chunshui was poked at his sore point, and he was almost crazy with anger. Yi Chushue, I will tear your mouth. She pressed her 10 fingers on the strings of the zither and flicked her fingers. The skull at the top immediately opened its mouth, protruding countless colorful arcs. Just looking at it would make people sink into it and be disturbed by countless inner demons and distracting thoughts. As the attack approached, Yi Chushue closed her eyes and suddenly opened them. 2 transparent sword lights slashed through in an instant, cutting off more than half of those silk threads in the blink of an eye. Qingming sky! She shouted softly, and the wind and clouds in the sky changed. The starry sky became a world full of small ice blue swords. Almost at the same time, Shen Chunshue gnashed his teeth angrily. 3,000 pink swords. Countless skeletons flooded over, resisting the encirclement of the small ice blue swords, occupying half of the sky. Kill them. The skeletons turned into residual shadows and rushed over. They opened their mouths ferociously and bit the small swords one by one. Yi Chushue's eyes flashed, and thousands of small swords also turned into sword lights and shot out. Just the 2 of them actually fought with the intensity of tens of thousands of people. The aftermath of the continuous sweeping in the void thinned the foundation again, and finally, boom! The ground sank and the sky fell and the earth cracked. Shen Chunshue and Yi Chushue were both deputy lords of the Star Hall. Neither of them could do anything to the other. The battle didn't last long. Finally, a lord came out of isolation and forced a stop. But the storm spread for a long time before it stopped. Until Shen Chunshue was sent to guard the Dingfeng Star Zone and Yi Chushue returned to the Star Hall area, no one mentioned it again. In the end, Sister Hong Luo has won this game of chess. Yi Chushue returned to her own bedroom. Seeing the red figure in the spiritual realm, her tense expression suddenly relaxed. The beautiful figure in the spiritual realm let out a faint smile, but did not turn around. Fortunately, you got the test token this time. It proves that you first contacted the junior in the small world, so you won slightly. Shen Chunshue is temporarily exiled. You can concentrate on improving your strength. Don't be careless. Beichen's people will not give up. I understand. Yi Chushue nodded and sighed. It's a pity that the junior was implicated by me. With Shen Chunshue's mind, he must have left some means. I hope she can be blessed. The beautiful figure in the mirror was silent for a moment, and said, There are so many small worlds. You only have a mark of the star path. If you want to find that girl in a short time, even I can't do it. This matter can only depend on her own luck. We can't help her. Yi Chushue understood this and couldn't help but sigh again. After Su Li came out of isolation, she returned to Ni sect to meet Hua Yen and others, and then she isolated again. This time, the isolation only lasted for 3 days. 3 days later, Su Li sat in the quiet room and looked inside her pubic region. On the 18th grade Black Lotus, Su Li sat in it in the shape of a baby. She looked solemn, but under the black wrapping, she looked a bit evil. Yuanying realm. This is a realm that I didn't reach in my last life. Su Li saw the gurgling power of Yuanying in her body, with the unique jade-like feeling of Sueyu tactics. The gray film buried under the surface of the skin seemed to have thickened to the thickness of a hair. The total amount had increased, and the area that could be covered was also larger. How much strength can the new gray film make me exert without being discovered by the natural law needs new experiments? Coincidentally, Su Bai hasn't eaten for a long time. My physical body hasn't changed. It seems that my realm is low. The breakthrough of the immortal realm has no effect on my physical body. The evil ghost has a new change, which is related to the Black Lotus. I still need to explore it. All kinds of thoughts flashed in her mind, and Su Li got up and opened the door. Hua Yen, Yen Zai, LVU, Dongfang Wushue and others were all there. Su Li slightly tilted her chin, showing a bright smile. Everyone, let's go. After this, Jiuzhou region will be our world. The blue stone was covered with thick moss, which was slippery when walking on it. Her nose was full of the smell of wet grass. Su Li looked up and saw the familiar mountain gate. She raised her lips and stepped up. The plan had been made 10 years ago. In the past 10 years, she just gathered everyone's efforts to improve the framework. When it was finally implemented, she was very idle. The first step was to launch all the secret forces and temporarily pinch the eyes of all the holy sections. The spies of the holy sects had long been transparent in the eyes of the lords. In the past, they just didn't touch them for the sake of the face of the holy sections. Now they had a new master who was absolutely powerful and overbearing. Naturally, they had to obey the master's orders. After the first step, the 23 sects used all the secret forces to infiltrate into Zihan sect and Yushu sect at the same time and temporarily controlled all the people who were suspected to be the spies of the holy sects. After 2 steps, the 23 sects had a short blank period. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 23 sects, which had been prepared for a long time, were divided into 2 groups and attacked the 2 sects at the same time. The Immortal Cultivation sect divided the ghosts into 2 groups, and each group went to help the 2 sects. Many ants could bite an elephant to death. A sect faced the old guys of 12 sects at the same time. Even if it had a deep foundation, it couldn't bear it at all, not to mention the existence of ghosts, which was incomprehensible to practitioners. Therefore, the 2 sects were stunned by the sudden invasion. They only held on for 2 days, and were on the verge of being breached. What's going on? Who can tell me why the 23 sects attacked our Yushu sect and Zihan sect at the same time? In the last line of defense, the eyes of Yao Shuangya, the current lord of Yushu sect, were red, and most of his soft black hair turned white in 2 nights. The atmosphere in the whole hall was tense, like a string that was about to break. It's not a big deal if a strong enemy attacks. Our Yushu sect has prepared for a rainy day and prepared a lot of records. But every time we counterattack, the rout is calculated, and we are completely annihilated. The sect is so shaky. Who is adding insult to injury? Who is the mole? The whole hall was silent. Many elders looked at each other, and they were all at a loss. They were elders who had stayed in Yushu sect for more than 1,000 years. How could they be the mole? Lord, the people in the sect are shaken now. It's not the time to talk about this. Li Hai, the deputy lord, stood up and said, Yao Shuangya took a deep breath and barely calmed down. You are right. We should be more united in the face of the enemy. But the 12 sects joined forces, and the old ancestor was seriously injured. The spies we sent to seek help from the holy sects have no news. What should we do now? Everyone's hearts sank, and they fell into a long silence. Chapter 5:35. At this point we have no choice. Li Hai looked dignified. He looked at Yao Shuangya and said solemnly, Lord, we can't resist the joint forces of the 12 sections. We can only rely on external forces. If we don't use the trump card of Immortal Tea Plant, you are the only one left to wake up Grand Elder. Impossible. Yao Shuangya interrupted Li Hai's words with a gloomy look. Grand Elder is at a critical moment, which is related to the rise of our sect. We must not disturb him. As soon as these words came out, many elders were worried at the same time. What should we do? The elder in charge of the supply of spiritual stones looked worried. Even if the tactical matrix for protecting the sect shrinks to the extreme, it can only last for half a day. Can we only surrender? Yao Shuangya saw that people were unstable. Even if his heart was as heavy as a mountain, he still looked calm and his tone was steady. Our Yushu sect has stood for thousands of years. How can it be defeated by a group of mobs? The war is inevitable. You wait to recuperate first. At that time, I will have a way to deal with the combat power of Grand Elder. Hearing Yao Shuangya's words, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and said in unison, Lord is wise. However, no one knew how many people actually believed it. I'll take someone to check the tactical matrix. Li Hai's eyes flashed and he retreated. Deputy Lord Li, wait. I'll go with you. The elder in charge of the supply of spiritual stones hurriedly followed him out of the hall. Seeing this, the Lord looked slightly relaxed. At the critical moment, there were still people in the sect who could be relied on. However, when he thought of Grand Elder, his mood was gloomy again. Over the years, others didn't know why Yushu sect was strong, but he knew it as the Lord. Grand Elder had disappeared as early as more than 2,000 years ago. If he hadn't climbed up the holy sects in time, Yushu sect would have been swallowed by Zihan sect. How could it still maintain prosperity? All the spies of the holy sects have been removed, and even the elder in charge of contacting the holy sects has disappeared. Who on earth is so generous? Yao Shuangya calculated. Facing the unknown enemy, he felt more and more powerless. Unconsciously, he came to a palace. Looking up at the words Holy Girl Hall, he felt inexplicably cold. Bad luck. Yao Shuangya's face darkened. He waved his sleeves, turned around and left. This scene clearly fell into the eyes of Fong Ling, who was sitting upright in the hall, her expression as usual. After the chaos 1,000 years ago, the position of the holy girl of Yushu sect had long been regarded as a jinx. If it were not for the order of holy sects that the holy girl was required to preside over the necessary rituals, the position of the holy girl would have been revoked long ago. After she came back from that world, although she took over senior sister apprentice May's class, she was also suspected of being a soul snatcher, so she was always guarded against by the master and the lord. This situation became more obvious after she saved Mei Ruhen. However, she didn't care. Atonement, there might be another way now. Fong Ling whispered to herself. She took out an old embroidery from her arms, which was almost falling apart. There were 2 characters, Linli, on it. She could still remember that carefree self of hers. That kind of simple busyness was a kind of warmth and happiness that she had never experienced before. How great would it be if everything in that world was real? Fong Ling sighed and closed her eyes. She didn't have much time to rest. Yao Shuangya walked out of the main hall and looked up at the huge and endless spiritual power impact outside the seemingly indestructible tactical matrix for protecting the sect. He quickly withdrew his gaze and turned to walk into the back mountain. In front of an ancient palace, he stopped and pondered for a moment. He called softly, "Old ancestor?" The palace was silent for a moment, and there was an old cough. "Come in." Yao Shuangya didn't expect that the old ancestor would really respond to him. He was slightly happy at the moment, and pushed the door into the hall. The curtains on all sides of the palace were closed, and only a few spiritual lamps lit up a few areas. The sight suddenly dimmed. Yao Shuangya came to the quiet room where the old ancestor usually practiced in isolation. Seeing the door open, he immediately walked in. The old ancestor, who usually had white hair and a ruddy face, now had a wrinkled face and a thin figure. There was a little blood on the chest of his snow-white robe, like plum blossoms. Yao Shuangya thought that his injury should be better after the old ancestor called him in, but he didn't expect it to be more serious. He was shocked immediately. "Old ancestor." "Ahem. I'm not dead yet. What are you shouting for?" Immortal Yushu Dingyan's eyes were gloomy, and he couldn't help but cover his mouth and cough twice. The cultivation of the old ancestors of the 12 sects is a little lower than mine. But I'm not weaker than them. I just hate the weird ghost that greatly reduces my strength. Otherwise, how can I be like this? I'm afraid that's the means of the person in the dark. Yao Shuangya's tone was a little weak. It's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to guard against a stab in the dark. Whoever thought that there would be someone who could unify the power of the 23 sects? The enemy is aggressive and well-prepared. How should we deal with it? You and I both know that Grand Elder is not in the sect. Ding Yen paused, and his voice was low. The name of Immortal Yushu is passed on to me. Yushu sect must not be destroyed in my hands. You come with me to see the demon tree Bizhui. Do we really need to rely on the old monster Bizhui? Yao Shuangya was shocked, but he didn't say anything. He obediently flew out of the palace with Ding Yen and landed in front of the demon tree of Tea Tree Mount. In the process of flying, Ding Yan's dry face quickly filled up and changed to the original childish appearance. His sluggish pneuma also temporarily recovered, but the blood on his chest was not erased. Yao Shuangya breathed a sigh of relief. The old ancestor is not confused. He is still guarding against Bizhui. Senior Bizhui, Please show up. Ding Yen spoke with full of vigor, and his voice spread far between the cliffs. Boom, the giant tree swayed, and soon Bijue's old face appeared on the thick roots. It turns out to be Ding Yen. After you took over the title of Immortal Yushu, you have never looked for me. Why are you here today? Although Bizhui was being sarcastic, his tone was not bad. Ding Yen was slightly relieved and said in a deep voice, "Senior, are you willing to make a deal with me?" Bizhui let out a faint smile. "Let's hear it." Ding Yen held his fists and said in a low voice, "Yushu sect is about to be destroyed. Senior, it's impossible that you don't know it. After the big tactical matrix for protecting the sect is broken, you will be trapped here. I'm afraid it's hard to protect yourself, right?" Hee hee. Bijue's tone turned cold. "Your Yushu sect knows why I am trapped. Why do you come here to laugh at me?" "Senior, you misunderstood me." Ding Yan's attitude was extremely humble as he hurriedly explained, "I came here this time to help Senior undo the seal." "Ha!" Bizhui laughed. "There is no free lunch in the world. Ding Yan, do you want me to fight for your sect? That's impossible. Even if I am trapped here, I will never help you deal with the enemy." Yao Shuangyao was shocked and angry, but Ding Yan was not surprised at all. He continued to lower his posture. "Senior, the 12 sects have joined hands. Even if you are willing to help, it will be useless. I want you to help me conveniently. There will be no danger." A trace of interest appeared on Bijue's old face. "What? You want us to escape?" Mo Qin was called to the side hall alone and looked at Li Hai, who came to deliver the message. "How can we escape? Aren't we trapped in the big tactical matrix for protecting the sect?" "It's the demonic tree." Li Hai's voice was as calm as ever. Old Ancestor made an agreement with Bizhui to set him free. Bizhui will evacuate with the elites of the sect and go to other big regions to start anew. "I see." Mo Qin smiled bitterly. It was really Ding Yan's usual style. Suddenly, she remembered one thing. Seeing that Li Hai had not left, she quickly asked, "How many people is he going to take away?" Li Hai looked at Mo Qin and did not speak. Mo Qin's heart was cold. Xiao Yang and Shaochen, Beishao Liang is now the first genius of the younger generation of our sect. Naturally, he will not be abandoned. It is Qi Chen who will be abandoned. Li Hai said regretfully, "The demonic tree is only willing to take away 100 people. If we start anew, we must have an alchemist. Old Ancestor doesn't even want to take you." "How come?" Mo Qin fell to the ground in a daze. She had already abandoned a disciple. Now she wanted her to abandon the second one? Li Hai stood in place and did not leave. After a long time, Mo Qin suddenly raised her head, stared at the person in front of her, and slowly said 2 words. "Li Hai." There was a smile on Li Hai's cold face. Perhaps because he hadn't smiled for a long time, his smile was extremely ugly. "You haven't called my name for a long time." Mo Qin shook her head. "I know my level of alchemy. In terms of importance, it is not enough to enter the top 100 of the sect." "Did you say something to Yao Shuangya?" Being exposed, Li Hai was silent for a while and said, "I don't want you to die." Mo Qin smiled in a low voice, raised her head, and her eyes seemed to light up. "Take Chi-Chen with you, I will stay." Li Hai was immediately shocked. You should be able to understand me." Mo Qin walked to Li Hai, and her tone was as calm as death. "You know better than anyone how I have lived in the past 1,000 years. I want to go down to accompany her." Mo Qin's eyes softened. "That girl must be very lonely down there alone." "That's not your fault." Li Hai's eyes flashed with pain. "None of us can save her. Do you understand? So, I was wrong from the beginning. The better I treat her, the more I hurt her." Mo Qin closed her eyes. "Don't worry about me anymore, Deputy Lord Li." Whoosh! Li Hai pointed at Mo Qin's sleeping acupuncture point. Looking at the person who fell softly in his arms, his cold eyebrows frowned together, and then became flat after a while. "What? You want to stay?" Yao Shuangyao looked at the cold man in front of him in amazement. "Li Hai, this is not like you." In his impression, Li Hai never did anything without benefits, let alone self-sacrifice. Did he take the wrong medicine this time? There must be someone to sacrifice. If there is no high-level person to stay, the sect will fall apart too fast. I'm afraid that you won't even have time to escape. Li Hai's voice was dull, as if he was not sacrificed in his words. Yao Shuangya's face changed slightly when he heard the words, and then he felt a sense of sympathy. You can always convince me easily. If it weren't for this disaster, maybe the next lord of Yushu sect would be you. It's useless to say more. You should get ready quickly. Chi-Chen will take my place. He is a good seedling. Okay. Yao Shuangya didn't think much, and quickly left to cooperate with Bizhui. Everything was done in secret. Li Hai looked back and saw thousands of ignorant disciples who were still maintaining the operation of the tactical matrix distributed among the mountains, and his eyes flashed with self-mockery. I still lost to you, Qin. Chapter 5:36. On the verge of extinction, Yushu sect's efficiency was extremely high. After deciding on the seed candidates, only an hour later, everyone was summoned to a dim hall. Ahem! Ding Yan opened his eyes and looked at Li Hai. Although his pupils were old and turbid, they seemed to be able to see through everything. Then his old voice sounded from the latter's awareness sea. Compared with Yao Shuangya, I appreciate you more. Do you really want to stay for a woman? Li Hai tightened his arms around Mo Qin, pursed his lips, and did not respond. Forget it. The appreciation in Ding Yan's eyes faded and was replaced by indifference. You should go out. Li Hai bowed his head and gestured, handing the unconscious person in his hand to Bei Xiao Liang and Chi-Chen, who were standing not far away. He secretly transmitted the sound, without me in the future, take care of your master. Don't let me down. Deputy Lord Li, Chi-Chen took over the master and called out in a bitter voice, but his voice was stuck in his throat. In such a desperate situation, even the old ancestor could only choose to escape. He wanted Li Hai to stay, but there was no way at all. Should it be so painful to be weak? Deputy Lord Li, you stay, I'll go out. Bei Xiao Liang's eyes were firm. Li Hai smiled, and his smile was as ugly as ever. Your master has lost your senior sister apprentice. I can't let her lose any more disciples. Live well, do you understand? Bei Xiao Liang lowered his head, didn't let himself look so embarrassed, and said softly, without you, master will be sad. Li Hai's whole body shook slightly, and then his smile became brilliant. That's the best sentence I've ever heard. After that he patted Bei Xiao Liang's shoulder, and without stopping, he decisively turned and disappeared at the door of the hall. Bei Xiao Liang was startled and looked up suddenly, but he didn't see his back. His eyes suddenly dimmed, and his heart was drowned by the surging guilt and powerlessness. He always understood that his master was an alchemist with mediocre combat power. Without Li Hai's secret help, it was impossible for him to become so excellent. For him, what was the difference between Li Hai's status and that of his master? But now, Bei Xiao Liang's mind was in a mess, and he was silent. The hall was similarly terrifyingly quiet. The feeling of being forced to leave one's home was unpleasant to anyone. Even those who were naturally cold and indifferent couldn't help but reveal their displeasure. Ahem. You are all elites carefully selected by me. The important task of reinvigorating Yushu sect will be handed over to you. Don't let me down. Li Hai covered his mouth, his face was abnormally red. He waved his hand and sent out a message. In the next moment, a jade-green vortex appeared out of thin air at the center of the hall. Shockingly, it was the teleportation entrance of the immortal Dao tea tree. Time is running out. Let's all go in. We will leave the Jiuzhou region with the immortal tea plant. After we get out of the region, it depends on our own luck. After Ding Yan finished his words, Yao Shuangya immediately took the lead to enter the green whirlpool, and the elders who followed Yao Shuangya entered one after another. With them taking the lead, the rest of the people no longer hesitated and all entered the whirlpool. Bei Xiao Liang carried the unconscious Mo Qin on his back, looked at Chi-Chen, and also stepped in. After everyone entered, Ding Yan also stepped into the whirlpool. At the same time, he unlocked the last restriction on the immortal tea tree. Bizhui, It's time for you to keep your promise. Boom! While the earth was shaking, the remaining disciples of Yushu sect were shocked to find that the entire tea tree peak suddenly collapsed and completely disappeared. Calm down. Li Hai's face was gloomy. Continue to defend the big tactical matrix. If the big tactical matrix is destroyed, everyone will die. Shi Qiu, the elder in charge of the supply of spiritual stones, looked sad and distributed the few remaining spiritual stones in a daze. He was one of the insiders, but what could he do? If the truth was announced now, it would not help, and it would only make them die faster. Outside the big mountain protecting tactical matrix, the flowing light was overflowing. Tens of thousands of practitioners gathered from the 12 sects crowded the top of the mountain. They joined into 12 offensive tactical matrices to bombard the big mountain protecting tactical matrix, but there was still a considerable part of energy accumulated, ready to be released. The practitioners above Jindan realm of the 12 sects densely occupied the sky of the entire Yushu sect. In the center of everyone, Yen Zai looked at the Yushu sect's big tactical matrix, which had become as thin as a piece of paper. He was silent, as if waiting for something. Suddenly, a flowing light passed through the nothingness. He immediately grabbed it and scanned it with his divine awareness. Then his eyes brightened, and he raised his head and shouted coldly, "Everyone, attack with all your strength." Boom, 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 boom. The 12 offensive tactical matrices lit up with dazzling light almost at the same time. In the horrified eyes of the disciples of Yushu sect, the light converged into a terrifying energy waterfall, and suddenly bombarded the same point of the big mountain-protecting tactical matrix. Clatter! The harsh sound resounded through the sky, and many disciples who maintained the tactical matrix vomited blood. They looked up at the big mountain-protecting tactical matrix, which was broken with a big hole. The big tactical matrix is broken. Swish! Yen Zai's figure flashed, and the flying sword behind him also flew out, pointing at the main hall of Yushu sect. Capture Li Hai and the holy girl Fong Ling alive. If the ordinary disciples resist, kill them. If they surrender, don't kill them. If they surrender, don't kill them. If they surrender, don't kill them. Rush! The practitioners of the 12 sects rushed to the top of the mountain of Yushu sect like a flood, and there were sounds of killing. For a time, blood flowed like a river. In the face of the elites of the 12 sects, the battle of Yushu sect was simply a one-sided massacre. All the disciples of Yushu sect were desperate. I surrender! Someone dropped the flying sword in his hand and held his head with both hands. After seeing this, the coalition of the 12 sects only stunned rather than killed him, and then continued to kill the next disciple of Yushu sect. When others saw this, they immediately had hope and surrendered one after another. I'm just an elder responsible for the supply of spiritual stones. I surrender. When Shi Qiu saw Yen Zai coming with people, he immediately held his head with both hands in panic and shouted in embarrassment. Yen Zai raised his eyebrows and knocked Shi Qiu out with the back of the sword. Then the flying sword turned and suddenly attacked another long-faced elder. Wait, I surrender. As soon as the long-faced elder spoke, the flying sword pierced through his chest and brought out a yuaning. Why? The long-faced elder vomited blood, and the light in his eyes quickly dimmed. Yen Zai summoned the flying sword expressionlessly, and sarcasm flashed in his eyes. Not everyone can get Mr. Li's special pardon. The sun set and the moon rose. 6 hours passed in a blink of an eye. The cold moonlight shone on the blood-red mountain gate, which looked a little gloomy and terrifying. Cough cough. Li Hai coughed up 2 mouthfuls of blood and sat on the ground powerlessly. His cultivation was sealed, and his injury was serious. He couldn't even stand up. Behind him, there were Fong Ling, Shi Qiu, and others. Their cultivation was also sealed, and they were like fish on the chopping block. Why don't you kill me? He looked up and stared at Yen Zai, who was surrounded by everyone, and asked in a hoarse voice. Was this person the initiator of all this? Unexpectedly, he was not too sad. The new ruler was not bloodthirsty, and almost all ordinary disciples survived. This was the greatest kindness in the war of cultivation. Yen Zai turned his head and did not answer him, but transmitted the sound, "Wuxue, how is it?" Dongfang Wuxue quickly responded, "It's almost over. All the 30,000 ordinary disciples of Yushu sect have been incorporated. All the elders have been executed except those named by Mr. Li. No one has been missed." Yen Zai smiled, and then received a message from Huayan. "Zihan sect is also over. Grand Elder Zihan didn't survive 10 moves from Wen Yuanqing of Immortal Cultivation sect, and he didn't cause any obstruction. We are almost at Yushu sect now." Hearing the 3 words, Wen Yuanqing, Yen Zai's face turned slightly pale. Fortunately, it was dark at night, so he was not found. Mr. Li really dares to accept anyone. No, it's a ghost. This thought flashed through Yen Zai's mind. He put away the distracting thoughts and waved his hand. "Everyone in the 12 sects, except for those who appease the disciples of Yushu sect, everyone will accompany me to meet Mr. Li." Speaking of this, he pointed to Li Hai and others on the ground. "Take these people with you." Mr. Li? Even if she was seriously injured and caught, Fong Ling didn't change at all. Hearing this word, her delicate body suddenly trembled, and she raised her head to try to see Yen Zai's face. But Yen Zai had turned around and no longer looked at her. Traitor! Coldness flashed through Yen Zai's eyes. Mr. Li had suffered so many grievances, but this woman could still be a holy girl in the sinful place of Yushu sect with a clear conscience. If Mr. Li hadn't specifically told him, he would have killed Fong Ling long ago. "Let's go." The gathering place is the Holy Girl Hall of Yushu sect, which is still well preserved. When Yen Zai waved his hand, a group of people rushed to the Holy Girl Hall. Su Yang, who was in front of the team, couldn't help but marvel. The unification of Jiuzhou region would happen tonight. Blockhead, Su Jiuzhou actually did it. And it only took 10 years. Su Mu glanced at him coldly and didn't speak, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Turning the impossible into the possible. Maybe if they followed her, there would be a glimmer of possibility. "Sister." A moment later, everyone stopped outside the Holy Girl Hall and saw that another group of people had arrived. "Sister Huayan." Yen Zai greeted them, and he couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. "We succeeded." Hua Yen nodded with a smile, and her worried heart was finally relieved. Although the road ahead was still difficult, they had conquered a large region, and they were not without foundation. "Go in." Yen Zai responded, waved his hand, and entered the Holy Girl Hall with Hua Yen. The empty hall seemed to be unusually quiet. All the lords of the 33 sects subconsciously lightened their steps, and they were a little nervous. Most of them had not seen the Mr., and the level of contact they had was limited to Yen Zai and others. Was the Mr. who unified Jiuzhou region male or female? How great was he? They could get a glimpse of him today. In a few steps, in the fluttering gauze curtain, Fong Ling looked anxiously. Finally, a graceful and thin figure appeared in front of them. A female practitioner. It was a female practitioner. Fong Ling was excited. Was it really her? "Sorry to keep you waiting, Mr. Li. We are late." Yen Zai stopped the team, walked to the front, and knelt on one knee. His eyes were full of love and joy. "Fortunately, we didn't fail you. Conquer Jiuzhou region." Chapter 537. You've done well. The throne under Su Li automatically turned around, and her charming face was revealed to the public for the first time. Her slender and white fingertips touched the corner of her eyebrows, and her smile was as pure and beautiful as an orchid in an empty valley. "Mister, you are a wise leader." The sect leaders bowed in unison, unable to conceal the excitement in their eyes. Breaking away from the sage sect's control and unifying the entire region, if it was 10 years ago, they wouldn't even dare to think about it. Ni sect, which was composed of 25 sects in Jiuzhou region, definitely had the potential to become a member of holy sects. The ranks of the sage sects, as long as one was a cultivator, who wouldn't rush to join. The so-called winner takes all. It was nothing more than this. Under the expulsion of such a mentality, The lords who joined the Ni sect voluntarily or not showed unprecedented enthusiasm at this moment. Of course, all of this was built on the premise that there was someone powerful enough to lead all of them. The aura seems to be the same. Fong Ling looked at Su Li sitting on the white throne absent-mindedly. She couldn't hide the disappointment in her eyes. No matter how similar her temperament was, it still wasn't her. The female cultivator in front of him was far too young. Su Yang pursed his lips. This old monster still liked to act young as usual. I'm Su Jojo. Su Li glanced at everyone present. Her tone was light, but it was full of unspeakable overbearingness and pressure. Now you are the Grand Elder of Ni sect, and in the future, you will be the Lord of Jojo region? Do you have any objections? As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere here froze. Yen Zai, who knelt on one knee at the front, had a firm look in his eyes and said loudly, "Mister, you are so talented that you should be the ruler of Jojo region." Seeing this, Hua Yan's eyes flashed. She stepped forward and bowed her head slightly. She shouted, "Greetings, Jiushou Region Lord." LVU, Dongfang Wuxue and others knelt down and shouted, "Greetings, Jiushou Region Lord." "Greetings, Jiushou Region Lord." Gui Baiyan and others who had been taught the soul tactics echoed. Seeing so many people respond, the people of the 23 sects finally let go of the last hesitation in their hearts. They all knelt down and bowed to worship. "Greetings, Jiushou Region Lord." "Greetings, Jiushou Region Lord." "Greetings." For a time, the hall was filled with cheers. The people who were captured alive looked at each other in shock. Even Li Hai, who had no fear in his heart, couldn't help but be shocked. The scene of the change of dynasty in the Jojo region happened in front of him. Everything happened so fast that he felt unreal. However, the faint pain from his body told him that everything was real. Unfortunately, the lord of Yushu sect fled with his people, and their old ancestor is nowhere to be found. In the crowd, Mu Hong couldn't help but say, and her face was full of unwillingness. When she mentioned the topic, the lords of the 12 sects attacking Yushu sect also remembered this omission and spoke one after another. The immortal Dao Tea tree disappeared as well. Old monster Jade Void must have made a deal with the immortal Dao Tea tree. With the immortal Dao Tea tree's escape technique, it should be able to do it without anyone noticing. "Sir, if we don't get rid of these fish that slipped through the net, I'm afraid there will be flaws in our plan," Dong Minglan said worriedly. Ever since she had taken over the Liang sect, she, as the vice-sect leader, had risen rapidly in just 6 years. She had replaced the original sect leader and become the only person in charge of the Liang sect. With the rise of her status, she not only did not underestimate an I sect, but also increasingly felt that this seemingly young lord was unfathomable, so she had always been loyal and devoted to him. "It's fine." Su Li smiled lightly and waved her hand. Hua Yan immediately turned around and smiled at the crowd. "Don't be impatient, everyone. After an hour, you will see the result." As soon as this was said, everyone was stunned, and then their faces changed to different degrees. They were surprised and doubtful. Could it be that Mr. can even stop the immortal Dao Tea tree? That is an old monster that has lived for nearly 10,000 years. Li Hai's calm face became gloomy, and he was faintly uneasy. Was his sacrifice going to be in vain? In the core space of the underground tea tree, the hundreds of people who escaped from Yushu sect gathered everywhere in groups of 3 or 5. Qi Chen and Beishao Liang protected Mo Qin on both sides, both silent. Mo Qin stared blankly at the front of the nothingness. Su Li's voice and smile in the past sometimes flashed in her mind, and sometimes turned into Li Hai's unsmiling face. There had never been a moment when she felt so disgusted. Obviously, she didn't have any ability, but she naively wanted to protect everything. In the end, she harmed everyone. "It turns out that I am a scourge. Li, Brother Hai, it is me who harmed you. It is me." Emochin's eyes were full of self-reproach. She bowed her head and bit her lips tightly, clutching her heart tightly. "Master?" Beishao Liang looked at his master's uncomfortable look, and he also felt uncomfortable in his heart. But he was also helpless. All he could do now was to practice hard. Chen took a deep breath and grasped the spiritual stone in his hand. At this moment, he had the same idea as his senior fellow apprentice Bei Xiaoliang. Only by becoming strong enough could he protect Master, could he avenge Master Li Hai. Boom! Suddenly, the entire core space of the tea tree shook violently and then stopped from running at high speed. What's the matter? Have we arrived at the outer region? Yao Shuangya stood up nervously. Ding Yan beside him was still calm, and he sent a message. Biz Hui, do you want to turn against us? Don't forget, only if you send us to the outer region, I will unlock the last seal left in your body. Ding Yan, don't underestimate my ability. A green light group was transmitted into the core space and turned into a clear picture. In the picture, the boundary tablet of Jiuzhou region was clearly visible. Looking at the surrounding desolate landform, it seemed that it was the Defu region near Jiuzhou region, which was already very far from Yushu sect. What a fast speed! Ding Yan was slightly shocked, but he was more happy to get rid of death. The Dafu region had been destroyed, and few people came here. It was the best place to hide and heal. Great! We escaped! The rest of the people of Yushu sect also showed joy. Even Bei Xiaoliang and Chen were inevitably affected, and their faces showed a trace of relief. But this kind of relief did not last for a breath. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the green core space. Then an extremely terrifying repulsive force was generated out of thin air. Everyone was caught off guard, and they were all spat out of the space by Bizhui. More than 100 people rolled on the ground. Ahem! Ding Yan stood up awkwardly, looked up and saw thousands of eyes around him, and even saw Li Hai's shocked face. His face suddenly changed. Here is not the extraterritorial area, but Yushu sect. When the rest of the elders saw the scene in front of them, and then heard the roar of the old ancestor, how could they not understand their own situation, and they all showed despair. It's over! How could it be? Bei Xiaoliang gritted his teeth so hard that he almost bit blood. When he saw Li Hai, who was seriously injured and captured in the crowd, the despair and grief in his heart rose to the extreme. Senior fellow apprentice, look, the person sitting at the top. Suddenly, Chen bumped into him and pointed to the throne at the top blankly. Bei Xiaoliang looked back, and suddenly fell into a sluggish state. Mo Qin did not notice the abnormality of her two apprentices. In her eyes, there was only Li Hai covered with blood. She stumbled over. Yan Zai received Su Li's signal and ordered people to make way for her. There was a slight respect in his eyes. Li Hai covered his mouth and coughed violently twice before he said, "You shouldn't come back." Mo Qin suddenly smiled and gently grabbed Li Hai's cold hands full of blood. "No, I should come back. I figured it out. What happened is irreversible. Since I can't save you, it's better to die together." Suddenly touched by the strange warmth, Li Hai's body stiffened, and then his old face blushed. He said in a muffled voice, "Maybe, things are not as bad as you think." He was not a fool. How could he not notice the unusual movements of Yan Zai and others? The people of Ni sect clearly had 100 ways to kill him before, but they just seriously injured him and didn't kill him. Before seeing Yan Zai voluntarily make way for the team, he thought that Ni sect wanted to catch him alive and then kill him as an example to others. But now it seemed that he guessed very wrong. "Biz Hui, how dare you lie to me?" Ding Yan's eyes were bloodshot, and he stared at the old man's face in the turquoise vortex in the hall. Hearing Ding Yan's words, Biz Hui suddenly laughed in a low voice. "Tut! The Grand Elder of your Yushu sect deceived me that year. How can I fall into the same trap for the second time? It is more pleasant to cooperate with the Grand Elder of Ni sect. The seal in your hand has long been unlocked by the Grand Elder of Ni sect. Don't waste your effort. Tut! How does it feel to fall from heaven to hell?" The killing intent in Ding Yan's eyes skyrocketed. Before he made a move, he suddenly felt a very heavy pressure shrouding him, which pressed him to the ground with a bang and couldn't move. "Biz Hui, you can go now." Su Li's tone was cold, and Bijue's eyes suddenly changed slightly. He disappeared in the hall with the vortex, and his pneuma quickly went away with the wind. Everyone in the hall saw that Biz Hui was so afraid of Su Li, and their awe of her deepened again. Perhaps their new master was not inferior to the old monster of holy sections. They just didn't know how such a terrifying figure appeared out of thin air in Jiuzhou region. The name, Su Jiuzhou, was too strange, and it was probably fake. The identity of the new master was too mysterious. Sensing that Biz Hui went around outside and returned to the underground of Yushu sect to wait for death, Su Li's eyes returned to gentleness. The 10-year period was coming to an end, and Biz Hui would die suddenly in a few days. This was related to the big secret of her body of evil ghost and blood poison. Naturally, it couldn't be exposed. So, she simply made use of the waste and pretended that Biz Hui left again. Fortunately, everything went according to plan, and there was no accident. Thinking of this, Su Li looked back at Ding Yan. Looking at the old man who had committed countless sins on her, she smiled and said softly, "Immortal Yushu, have you ever thought that you would have such a day?" Ding Yan's eyes were full of anger, and he was about to speak. At this moment, the pressure that shrouded his seriously injured body suddenly increased, and his internal organs were deformed due to the pressure. The sharp pain surged, and Ding Yan suddenly blacked out. He spat blood and fainted. "Old ancestor!" Yao Shuangya knelt beside Ding Yan. His eyes were blank, and he was at a loss. He didn't even show any sign of resistance. He was just a puppet of Ding Yan, and he didn't have any ambition of rather die in glory than live in disgrace. In the crowd, the lord of Zihan sect, who was captured alive, sighed deeply when he saw this scene. At this point, there was no difference between sects in Jiuzhou region. Chapter 5:38. After dawn, the sun was covered by thick clouds, and it was drizzling. In Yushu Mountain, a new bamboo building was built under the disappearing T-Peak. It was quiet and elegant in the mountains and rivers. Su Li stood under the eaves, looking quiet and focused. She reached out to take a drop of rain. Her fingertips were cold, as if they could penetrate her heart. Standing behind her, Yan Zai didn't understand why this ordinary rain was so beautiful. Master's mind was always hard to guess. After sighing secretly, Yan Zai coughed softly and said in a low voice, "Master, the 23 sects have brought their people back to their sections. According to what you said, we won't announce that we belong to Ni sect first." Su Li came to her senses and nodded gently. "There is no impenetrable wall in the world. Even if I control the spies of holy sects, it won't take long for the reputation of Ni sect to reach their ears. However, if there is room, I will have time to prepare." Yan Zai looked worried. "Master, although holy sects don't know your existence, they can't sit back and watch a new holy sect rise. I'm afraid that a hard battle will be inevitable at that time." Su Li smiled when she heard the words, which made Yan Zai's state of mind calm down a lot. "You come from Void Sword sect, so you know that holy sects in all major regions can never be a piece of iron. Besides, there is the competition for the Tianjiao list, which distracts our attention. Our pressure is not as great as you think." Yan Zai nodded in agreement. "What you said is very true. This period of time is enough for us to stabilize the internal situation. Even if holy sects come to probe, they can't easily collapse." Su Li responded. "Yan sent a message that the selection of the Tianjiao in other major regions is in full swing. We have to hurry up and participate in those who should participate. Don't let others see the flaws." Speaking of this, her voice paused and her tone was slightly soft. "How are my master and others?" Master Mo Qin was placed in the Nuanxin Pavilion with the best healing effect in Yushu sect. She was just frightened but not seriously injured. But the deputy lord of Lihai, Yan Zai, scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "At that time, I was nervous, and I didn't know the relationship between him and Master Mo Qin. I didn't expect that the deputy lord of Yushu sect was so weak." Su Li couldn't help laughing. Perhaps it was because Yan Zai had been by her side for too long that he had almost forgotten that he was once a genius of Glory sect. In the 6 years when she entered the Chuangxing path, Yan Zai had nothing to do. He practiced hard, and with the help of the secret medicine he made, his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. When she came out, she was already at the peak of Huashan realm, half a step away from entering the nature's test period. How could Li Hai, who was only at the early stage of Huashan realm, be his opponent? Go and get busy. In these 10 years, you've crossed 2 realms, from Jindan to deification. Although your foundation is not damaged, your state of mind needs to be accumulated over time. You should settle down and comprehend it before you make a breakthrough. Zai has learned a lot. In the Nuanxin pavilion, Li Hai suddenly opened his eyes, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Mo Qin, who was guarding by the side, saw him wake up and immediately asked, Vice? Vice Lord Li, how is your injury recovering? Does your chest still hurt? Li Hai nodded and said in a muffled voice, If you can call my name again, I can get better faster. Mo Qin blushed and looked slightly annoyed. She got up and walked out. Li Hai immediately followed her when he saw it. Bei Xiao Liang and Qi Qin in the outer hall suddenly smiled. After the disaster of Yushu sect, the relationship between the master and Vice Lord Li seemed to be frozen. It was a good thing that there was a crack. Senior fellow apprentice, have you heard about the people who escaped with us? What happened to them now? Qi Chen's expression was slightly restrained, and he transmitted the sound in a low voice. Bei Xiao Liang shook his head. I was healing Vice Lord Li all morning and didn't go out. What did you hear? Do you remember the ice prison that imprisoned senior sister apprentice May before? Qi Chen's voice was low, and Bei Xiao Liang's face changed slightly. Lord, old ancestor, and holy girl are all locked up there. I heard that there are also the lord and elders of Zihan sect. Shaochen, what is the origin of this Anai sect? Do you have a clue? Li Hai didn't seem to catch up with Mo Qin. He returned to the house and sat next to Bei Xiao Liang. He frowned slightly. They seem to treat us very well. Except for leaving the sect, they don't restrict our actions at all. They even let me live in the Nuanxin pavilion to heal. Bei Xiao Liang and Qi Chen looked at each other, and a thin figure appeared in their minds at the same time. The kindness she released to them in the shattered spirit's illusory realm was still clear. If they wanted to know the answer, it seemed that they could only ask him. Bei Xiao Liang was a little lost in thought, and suddenly heard a scream of Mo Qin outside the door. Li Hai's face changed, and he immediately rushed out of the door. Bei Xiao Liang and Qi Chen also followed him. In the courtyard of the Nuanxin pavilion, Mo Qin stared blankly at Su Li, who suddenly appeared in front of her. She looked down at the empty kettle in her hand, and then saw the water stains on the black gauze clothes of the beautiful woman in front of her, which was dripping down the edge of the clothes. Panic suddenly appeared in her eyes. She was careless for a moment, and even poured the water used to water the flowers on the person with the highest status in Jiuzhou region. If this woman was angry, Li Hai and Bei Xiao Liang, Qin. Li Hai flashed out of the house and saw the scene in front of him. His heart suddenly sank, and the scene of the ancestor vomiting blood and fainting last night kept appearing in his mind. However, he still resisted the pressure and walked to Mo Qin's side, tightly grasped Mo Qin's cold hand, and bowed his head. Senior, please forgive me. Mo Qin didn't mean it. At this time, Bei Xiao Liang and Qi Chen also followed up. Seeing this scene, they were surprisingly not nervous. Su Li glanced at the two, and then her eyes returned to the master, who was so flustered that she lost her sense of propriety. She was silent for a while, and her indifferent and somewhat inhuman face suddenly became gentle. She waved her hand to disperse the water stains on her body, and smiled. Don't be nervous, come in and talk. Both Mo Qin and Li Hai were shocked, and then they couldn't help but feel flattered. Bei Xiao Liang and Qi Chen thought it was normal, but now that they knew Su Li's identity, they did not dare to take the initiative to speak. Thank you, master. Mo Qin reluctantly responded and followed into the house, but she was nervous. Although the face of the Lord of Jiuzhou region in front of her was very gentle, which was completely different from the cold and ruthless person last night, she still couldn't stop her palms from sweating. Sit down anywhere. Don't be too restrained. I'm here to solve your doubts today. Su Li waved her hand, and a special light flashed in the depths of her plain eyes. After all, the fact was not like in the Chuangxing path. In the cold despair of the previous life, the master lit a candle of hope for her. Although the candle was still extinguished in the end, it became the last warmth in her heart in this life, and did not let her completely fall into the cold. Unfortunately, it's not the time for a showdown. Su Li's eyes dimmed. Biz Hui saw the situation of the master. She wanted to let the master get out of guilt, but the details of the fate ancestor were related to deduction. The more she exposed, the more likely it was to repeat the same mistake. A little impatience will spoil the great plan. Su Li, at this time, you have to be calmer. Even if the Jiuzhou region you conquered is really pulled out, no one will want to be an enemy of a character with the combat power comparable to a junior emperor. But if you show any of the identities of the daughter of luck and the body of evil ghost, the entire Qingshui circle will come to kill you. Don't use the name Su Li for a long time. Black Lotus transmitted the sound seriously, which was rare. Su Li took a breath slightly and looked at the people sitting in the room in turn. Her eyes regained calmness. I believe you have a lot of doubts, especially the two little guys Beishao Liang and Qi Qin. As soon as Su Li said this, Mo Qin and Li Hai were stunned and turned their eyes. Beishao Liang scratched his head and said awkwardly, "Senior sister apprentice, you have changed so much that my junior fellow apprentice and I dare not recognize you." Senior sister apprentice? Mo Qin was shocked. She turned her head and stared at Su Li's strange face. Her lips trembled. "You are Li." Li Hai frowned, trying to find a trace of familiarity from Su Li's face, but he failed. Su Li pursed her lips slightly and said indifferently, "Although my surname is also Su, unfortunately I am not. Elder Mo Qin, I respect you as the master of that person, so as long as you have a good relationship with her, I will give preferential treatment." As she said, she turned her head and looked at Beishao Liang. She smiled jokingly. "In the secret realm of shattered spirits, I didn't want to reveal my identity, so I casually made up a senior sister apprentice. Now if you call me that, the misunderstanding will be big." Beishao Liang scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "I am being rude." "You are not?" The light in Mo Qin's eyes dissipated, and she was full of loss. She should have given up long ago, but why did she always have hope? "Although I am not." Su Li's eyes narrowed slightly. "I have many former subordinates of that person. Needless to say, Hua Yan, others such as Yan Zai and Ling Qinglan are all her former subordinates in the reincarnation mirror, so you can trust me." Yan Zai. Those are all former talents of holy sects. Li Hai seemed to know more. He frowned and thought for a moment. He raised his head and asked cautiously, "So, why do you take advantage of Holy Girl Su's power and painstakingly plan to unify the Jiuzhou region?" Deputy Lord Li deserves to be the future lord of Yushu sect. Su Li smiled sweetly and her eyes flickered. "How about we make a deal?" She raised her eyebrows, and a dangerous light flashed in her eyes. "You should understand that anyone who has a relationship with that person will be on the opposite side of all holy sections. And you have a closer relationship with that person. If you are driven out of the Jiuzhou region, your fate. I don't need to say more. If I want to continue to develop, I need more help." Li Hai frowned more and more tightly. He naturally knew that what the woman in front of him said was true. Because of this, he wanted to know whether it was worth staying in NI sect. "What do you want to say?" Su Li chuckled and her tone became serious. "How about all of you come to help me? Especially you, Li Hai, you are a rare talent. If you come to be the deputy lord of NI sect, it will be convenient to protect the people you want to protect, right? Slowly you will find that we are the same kind of people." Chapter 539. Li Hai finally agreed to Su Li's deal. From the moment the conversation ended, he took over the mess of Yushu sect. In his view, the deal that Su Jiuzhou said was simply a disguised threat, and he had no room to refuse. Not to mention the difficulty of leaving Jiuzhou region, just the moment he refused, Mo Qin and others would fall into an extremely dangerous situation with him. Whether they lived or died depended on Su Jiuzhou. Even if Su Li really came back to life and stood in front of them and said this sentence, he had to consider whether Su Li would choose to destroy because of the truth. What's more, the woman in front of him was not Su Li at all, but a stranger in the name of Su Li. It was entirely possible that she would be angry and kill him secretly. What if he chooses to refuse? In the quiet room of books, Hua Yan asked with a smile. Su Li's eyes flickered and she said softly, "If he really refuses, I won't do anything to them. At most, I will put them under house arrest and not allow them to leave. Otherwise, if Master falls into the hands of the enemy, I will be restrained." Speaking of this, she raised her eyebrows and smiled again. "I have seen through Bijue's eyes what kind of person Li Hai is. He will not take risks for Master. Similarly, for the safety of Master, he will do his best to do things for Ni sect. The safer Ni sect is, the more stable they will be, right?" Hua Yan said helplessly, "You are still the same as before. You like to calculate." "No, Yan, you are wrong," Su Li retorted with a smile. She looked down at her white palm clenched into a fist and murmured, "If I have enough strength, why do I have to think so much?" Hua Yan was stunned and immediately smiled. "You are right. Well, you are the lord of Ni sect, who has unified the Jiuzhou region. You come to me specially. You're not here to gossip, are you?" Su Li teased, and Hua Yan suddenly rolled her eyes. "Li, you have learned to make up your best friend? You are the real master of Ni sect. Don't you feel ashamed to say so?" As she said, she threw out a jade slip. "Here is the list of all the spies of holy sections. You can decide how to deal with them. After yesterday's war, Ni sect has moved and integrated into Yushu sect, and its reputation is not prominent in the world. Except for Zihan sect, other sects have also found candidates. What to do next depends on your decision." Su Li stretched out her hand, and the jade slip fell into her hand. After scanning it with her divine awareness, she rested her chin on one hand and showed a thoughtful expression. Hua Yan didn't disturb him. She sat at the side and waited quietly. The room became quiet. After she drank the third cup of tea, she suddenly raised her head, and her eyes were slightly fierce. Hua Yan immediately took out a blank jade slip from her interspatial ring and began to record. "I will solve the matter of Zihan sect. It is not the time for us to be exposed. All the spies of holy sects must be firmly controlled. Second, there must be some people in Jiuzhou region who have escaped the net. They have already sent the news to holy sects, but only a word or two. Holy sects will at most send someone to probe. Let Yan Zai keep an eye on the teleport. No suspicious person can be let go. Thirdly, let all sects hold the grand competition for cultivation, and the selected people would come to Yushu sect to fight as before. The top 20 could go to Shengxian Mountain to participate in the Tianjiao contest. Fourthly, use the intelligence route in your hand to find out where the big tactical matrix blocking Chimo Circle is." Hua Yan frowned when she heard the jade slip in her hand. "Chimo Circle? Is it the chaos zone that turned Dufu region into a dead place?" Su Li's eyes were deep. "Don't you find that there are very few matrix masters in the entire Jiuzhou region?" Reminded by Su Li, Hua Yan was suddenly shocked and suddenly understood. Yes. Su Guohong, the strong matrix master of Su family, has been missing for thousands of years. In Zhenlo group, I found only small fries and crab generals. There are hardly any matrix masters above high grade. Even Yushu sect, which is strong in matrix, can't see a few matrix masters, so we took the opportunity to break in. Otherwise, the holy tactical matrix that protects Yushu sect can't be broken no matter how much time we have. Is it? Under Hua Yan's surprised gaze, Su Li nodded. "I think it over and over again, and I always feel that it has something to do with Chimo Circle. I once heard the news that the war in Chimo Circle should have started 4 years ago, but there was no movement at all. It's so strange." Hua Yan looked slightly serious. "I see. I'll arrange an informant to inquire about it." Su Li nodded, but Hua Yan seemed to suddenly think of something. She squinted and smiled. "Li, you are more than qualified to participate in the Tianjiao contest. Are you interested in taking a place?" Su Li was slightly stunned. She had been making arrangements behind the scenes these years, but she forgot her body. She was a young girl in the prime of her youth. The dignified lord of Jiuzhou region can also participate in the Tianjiao contest. Hua Yan covered her hot face, and her eyes were full of yearning. If we succeed and make everything public to the world, what kind of legend will this be passed down by future generations? Su Li laughed, but she really thought about the feasibility of this matter. According to Xian and Shengxian Mountain was suppressed by the Tianjiao list, and the mysteries of heaven were obscured. She didn't worry about being found out by others. The only thing she needed to pay attention to was to control her power well and not expose too much to provoke the nerves of natural law. This matter might be difficult before the breakthrough of Suiyu tactics. But now the gray membrane in her body was thickened again. Even if she used the power comparable to Huashan realm, the natural law had no reaction. Thinking of this, Su Li thought of another thing, and couldn't help but have a headache. The external incarnation in her hand was almost exhausted, and she couldn't attract the thunder for punishment. Su Bai would not only starve, but also affect his continued growth. It couldn't be delayed. Yan, I once asked you to investigate the big region with a lot of ghosts. Did you find anything? When Su Li mentioned this, Hua Yan suddenly smiled. Speaking of this, I found something interesting. Su Li was slightly stunned, and Hua Yan continued, Do you still remember the Linli building? Su Li's expression changed slightly, and she said softly, Of course. By bribing a lord of Tianyake Attic, I found out that the base camp of the Linli building is hidden in the Yinyang region with a lot of ghosts. The holy sects sent many groups of seniors to explore it, but because of the special nature of the Yinyang region, they all returned without success. Special? Su Li raised her eyebrows. How special? I heard that the Yinyang region, as its name suggests, is half of the extreme Yin level, and the other half of the extreme Yang level. The two are obviously completely contradictory, but strangely balanced. In the crack between the two extreme areas, it is the area where the 5 elements are completely chaotic. No matter what tracking method is used, it will be completely ineffective. Many desperados who are chased by the holy sects are there. Speaking of this, Hua Yan's tone was firm. I heard that the core of the Linli building is hidden in the crack, and the status of the force there is quite objective. It is one of the only 3 forces that control a stable space. What are the other 2 forces? Su Li narrowed her eyes, but Hua Yan shook her head. That's all I got. You may know other information when you go to the Yinyang region. There are many ghosts in the extreme Yin area. Although ordinary practitioners can't survive there, it should be okay for you to stay there for a short time with your strength. Su Li nodded. There is still half a year before the Tianjiao battle in the Shengxian mountain begins. I still have enough time. If I don't come back by then, I will meet you in the Shengxian mountain. Hua Yan stared at her with her almond-shaped eyes. The Jiuzhou region has not been stabilized yet. Are you going to leave now? Of course not. Su Li smiled apologetically. The holy sects won't be too slow. After dealing with the people of the holy sects, I will set off immediately. For the future of the Ni sect, I have to continue to enhance my strength, right? Hua Yan rolled her eyes and said angrily, This is really a qualified reason to be a hands-off boss. Su Li chuckled. I believe that you can handle the rest with your ability. I will sell the Jiuzhou region later. Hua Yan said fiercely, and couldn't help laughing again. That's a deal. Our lord of the Jiuzhou region, remember to get a good ranking on the list of Tianjiao top 10,000 this time. Su Li smiled indifferently and did not answer. Hua Yan immediately understood and floated away. Since her friend decided to take action, the little guys of this generation would be out of luck. After a few days, the teleportation matrix of the cultivation city under the control of Yushu sect finally lit up one after another, and figures with extraordinary temperament appeared one after another. On this day, a red light flashed through the teleportation matrix, and 2 figures appeared. There was a faint voice of conversation in the sound of the teleportation matrix closing. Senior fellow apprentice, you are really worrying too much. I think the spy must have been outside for a long time and was unwilling to give up, so he spread such a rumor. Haven't the sect master and elders already confirmed with the other sects that there's no such thing as a sect war? It's a matter of great importance. Whether it's a lie or not, we have to come and see. The older one stepped out of the teleportation matrix and looked at the peaceful and backward streets of the city, and his thoughts were relaxed. It seemed to be a rumor. If there was a war, such a peaceful atmosphere would have been destroyed long ago. To be cautious, let's go to Yushu sect again. Okay, senior fellow apprentice. After the two finished talking, they walked into an inn together and closed the door. 3 days later, the two walked out of the inn talking and laughing. Under the strange eyes of pedestrians, they held their fists to a mass of air and walked into the teleportation matrix politely. After the two completely disappeared, Su Li walked out of the darkness with the little black cat in her arms, and her eyes were indifferent. Yen Zai beside her couldn't help but sigh. Master, the power of Hei is really surprising. In this way, we can directly save a lot of effort. The Jiuzhou region can be peaceful until the Battle of Tianjiao. At that time, any holy sects will not be afraid of them. Su Li smiled and said, I can't do it alone. You should also practice hard. Of course. Su Li responded and glanced at the sky. It seems that this is the last wave of spies. Among the 81 holy sects in Qingshui Circle, 60 waves of spies have come. They really care about the Jiuzhou region. Yen Zai nodded solemnly. The number is more than the number of spies. It seems that we still have a party of spies that we haven't caught. It is that person who leaked the information. I will leave tomorrow. I don't need to say more about the next thing. Su Li turned around and walked away slowly. Before leaving, she suddenly remembered that there was one more thing to do. Chapter 540. 34 Chinese Network, in 1 second wonderful pop-up window free reading. In the underground ice dungeon. Rumble. The stone door was opened, and the moist wind blew from the entrance. It instantly formed beautiful ice flowers and fell at Su Li's feet. As the stone door was closed again, Su Li's eyes darkened a little. She stepped out and flashed into the depths like a phantom. After a while, she stopped in front of a small iceberg. At the bottom of the iceberg, a dense chain of forbidden spirits penetrated and entangled the pale woman sitting on the ice. This woman was Fong Ling. In just a few days, Fong Ling's ruddy face had been frozen pale, and her lips were purple. However, her expression seemed very dead. It seemed that this suffering could not touch her at all. Fong Ling seemed to sense the change of light. Then she slowly raised her head and opened her eyes. After seeing the person clearly, her stiff face finally had a slight change, and her frozen lips opened and closed with difficulty. It's you, it's me? Su Li smiled lightly and sat down directly on the cold ground in front of Fong Ling. Do you know me? Fong Ling smiled faintly. Su Jiuzhou, the Grand Elder of an ice sect who only took 2 days to unify the Jiuzhou region. Now, everyone in the 25 sects knows you. I turned out to be so famous. Su Li tilted her head and seemed to be a little distressed. Seeing this, Fong Ling's smile became deeper. It was not her, but so what? She saw many familiar faces, including Yen Zai, Ling Qinglan, and many people who still missed her. Since there was someone who could gather these people together to avenge her, then she wouldn't have any regrets. Thinking of this, she hesitated for a moment and took the initiative to ask, "What are you doing here?" Su Li narrowed her eyes slightly. You don't seem to be afraid of me at all? Afraid? Why should I be afraid? Fong Ling stared at Su Li. I should have ended all this long ago, but I couldn't help it. Since such a person like you appeared, I can die without regrets. Su Li looked at Fong Ling silently. She couldn't distinguish or believe it anymore. What happened before was still vivid in her mind. If it weren't for Mei Ruhan, her bracelet wouldn't have been broken. As for the blessing in disguise, it naturally couldn't be attributed to Mei Ruhan. For example, Yen Zai and Ling Qinglan were kept in the dark and sent to the reincarnation mirror. After they came out, their temperaments changed greatly. They were completely tied up by the emotional shackles of the mirror world and gave up everything to wander outside. She could trust them. As for Fong Ling, how could she believe that she would continue to be a holy sect in Yushu sect and enjoy the best cultivation resources after coming out? Fong Ling naturally couldn't sense Su Li's hesitation. Seeing that the woman in front of her didn't speak for a long time, she didn't care and continued, "Although you have now gained a firm foothold, there are two things I want to remind you. The first thing is the spy of the holy sections. I have heard from the Grand Elder of Yushu sect that there are more than one spy of the holy sects in Jojo region. If your existence is known by the holy sects, there will be a hard fight. It's not your turn to worry about this." Su Li smiled coldly. "However, you are the holy girl of Yushu sect. Logically speaking, you should regard me as an enemy. I didn't expect that you would actually think for your enemy." "Enemy?" Fong Ling took a deep look at Su Li and turned her head away. Her voice was very soft. "We are not enemies." Su Li curled her lips with a touch of sarcasm. "You said there are two things. Then what is the second thing?" Fong Ling's eyes dimmed slightly. After a long silence, she finally said, "The second thing is the Grand Elder of Yushu sect. Although he has been missing for a long time, I heard from my master that the Grand Elder is still alive. He is comparable to the existence of Junior Emperor in the ancient cultivation period. You have to be careful." "Your master?" Su Li's eyes flashed. "Your master? Who is he? Ding Yan? Or Yao Shuangya?" "None of them. They are just in Huashan realm. How can they compare with my master?" Fong Ling shook her head, and there was a hint of struggle in her eyes. "My master, although she is heinous and has done so many wrong things, she treats me really well." Su Li looked at Fong Ling calmly. "So, is this the reason why you continue to stay in Yushu sect? I remember that you have a senior sister apprentice who is also in the ice prison, but I didn't see her this time. Where is she?" Su Li suddenly said. Fong Ling's delicate body trembled slightly, and the face with deep eye sockets appeared in her mind. However, with a smile on her face, she said softly, "Since you have gathered so many of her subordinates, I have long guessed that you will ask this. But the senior sister apprentice is not like me. Her consciousness in the mirror world is split from her body, and the two are in conflict with each other. Since she came out, she has become a complete lunatic." Su Li listened silently. It turned out that Mei Ruhan was really crazy. She remembered the scene when she met her a few years ago. The skeleton-like figure could still be clearly recalled. However, I later found that the consciousness of senior sister apprentice Mei in the mirror world gradually swallowed the original consciousness. In most cases, she had returned to normal, but she could not forgive herself, so she pretended to be crazy and tortured herself. Until I heard that the master wanted to strip her soul and use it as the core of the tactical matrix. Su Li's pupils shrank, and her voice was imperceptibly bitter. "Mei Ruhan is dead? Was that the last time she saw her?" Fong Ling's voice became more and more low and hoarse. She shook her head and said, "Senior sister apprentice has killed the consciousness of holy girl Su who killed Sister Li. She did nothing wrong and shouldn't be killed by the master. So, Luo Yichen and I made a plan to send the senior sister apprentice out of Jojo region." "I see." The lines on Su Li's face were much gentler. "On the one hand, you can't forget the master, and on the other hand, you are against the master's will. You are a surprisingly contradictory person." Fong Ling bit her lips, and pain flashed through her eyes. But she smiled and said, "Thank you for the compliment, Region Lord." Su Li smiled slightly. "Since you have revealed so much, I will change a better environment for you. At least, you will not end up freezing to death like your lord and others." Hearing Su Li's words, Fong Ling was disappointed. "If I had known it, I would not have said so much to you." Su Li chuckled and turned to leave. But she heard Fong Ling speak again behind her. This time, the voice was extremely heavy. "Be careful of my master." "What about her?" Su Li turned her head, only to see Fong Ling lowered her head, and her face could not be seen clearly. Fong Ling continued to say, "She is a person who is more difficult to deal with than the Grand Elder of Yushu sect. Even joining Yushu sect is also calculated. Be careful. Su Li raised her eyebrows. What's your master's name? What answered her was silence. The air stagnated for a moment, and Su Li turned and disappeared at the end of the ice road. She didn't ask, because it was meaningless. Since Yushu sect was easily won by her, it was enough to prove that Fong Ling's master was not in the sect. Rumble. The sound of the stone door closing came from far away. After the light dimmed, Fong Ling suddenly clutched her chest, and the blood-red mark between her eyebrows flickered constantly. The mark flickered faster and faster, and finally collapsed suddenly. Fong Ling only felt blood rushing up her throat, and she opened her mouth to spit out a dark red. Phew! Fong Ling let out a long breath and leaned against the cold stone wall, gasping for air. She only vaguely reminded her, but it triggered the inhibition set in her mind by her master. Master. In the world of ice and snow, a long sigh lingered. Hua Yan, I'm leaving. Su Li stood in front of the door and looked back at the extremely simple quiet room. I'll stay in the sect. This time, it has launched dozens of dreams in a row, and it really needs a rest. The little black cat lying in the cat's nest seemed to hear its master's concern, and it meowed softly. Hua Yan nodded, and her voice was clear and firm. Don't worry. I'm here. Su Li smiled and no longer said anything. She turned into a streamer and disappeared into the sky. In the desolate desert, the scorching sun was hanging high. Two figures could be seen from afar, one in front and the other in the back, moving forward in the wind and smoke. Suddenly, a gust of wind came and rolled up the sand. Su Buwang didn't check it for a moment, and his mouth was immediately stuffed with sand. Ba ba ba. Su Buwang spat, straightened up, touched his dry throat, and said helplessly, Uncle Fong, haven't we arrived yet? Fong Yuan tightened the cloth on his face, and looked at the undulating and boundless desert in the distance. Soon. If the map is correct, we will meet the crack in 2 days. 2 days? Su Buwang pulled a long face, raised his head, and fell on the soft sand powerlessly. He squinted at the fiery red Jinwu in the sky. We have been walking for a whole month. This yin and yang region is so special. It is not only vast, but also the protective spiritual shield can't block the sand. Fong Yuan sat aside and grabbed a handful of extremely hot sand. If you don't neglect your practice and step into the late stage of Yuaning realm, these sand will be able to block you. Uncle Fong, are you still a human? Su Buwang sat up with grief and indignation, pointed at Fong Yuan's nose and complained. In just 10 years, I suddenly stepped from the early stage of Jindan realm to the middle stage of Yuaning realm. You almost wasted my practice. Do you think it's easy for me? Even so, you still think I am slow. Fong Yuan's face was slightly serious. Today is different from the past. No one cared about you before. Now that you are with me, your cultivation can't be lagged. Do you want to lose face in front of your mother? Su Buwang scratched his head, and his eyes were a little confused. My mother, so many years have passed. Is my mother still alive? She must be alive. Fong Yuan's cold eyes were slightly dim, but his voice was low and firm. Su Buwang nodded. After a moment of silence, he asked again, Uncle Fong, how do you know that my mother may be in the yin and yang region? I saw that your face changed when you heard the words Linli building. Does it have anything to do with my mother? He had wanted to ask more specifically. After traveling with Fong Yuan for these years, he probably guessed that Uncle Fong had something to do with his mother. But every time he asked about his mother's origin, he couldn't get an answer. What kind of person was his mother on earth? Was she noble or humble? Since she had a relationship with such a mysterious and powerful uncle, she couldn't be the maid mentioned by the Lord Evil Emperor. So, was she beautiful or ugly? Was she fat or thin? Was his personality gentle or forceful? Su Buwang often thought so, and even often dreamed of a woman, but he couldn't see her face clearly. When Fong Yuan heard the words, Linli building, his eyelids twitched, and he turned his head away. How should he answer? Should he say that the woman had died for more than 1,000 years, And the enemy was the holy sex in the world? The murderer who killed your mother was not only your father, but also me. This answer was too heavy. What was the benefit of letting Su Buwang bear it? Since Ling Li was not cruel enough to tell him the truth, then, how could he bear it? Uncle Fong, look, what is that? Chapter 541. Fong Yuan looked at her in confusion. He saw a seemingly ethereal and light black figure in the wind and sand, but she was as still as a mountain in the strong wind and walked forward firmly and calmly. Didn't the seniors say that this place is deserted? She can still see other people. Su Buwang clicked his tongue in wonder. Is it possible that she is also protected by the river magic weapon like the one you gave me, Uncle Fong? Fong Yuan frowned slightly. Ordinary practitioners couldn't stay in either the negative extreme area or the positive extreme area of the Yin-Yang region. Even he could only hold on for half a year at most. If it weren't for the Milky Way, he wouldn't dare to bring Su Buwang here. Seeing that the figure was not fast, Fong Yuan only hesitated for a moment and said, "Let's go and have a look." But Su Buwang smiled and stood up like a carp. He patted the sand on his body and said excitedly, "Maybe she is a fairy sister." Fong Yuan shook his head slightly. At this time, he was full of enthusiasm. Fong Yuan didn't know who he got such a slippery temperament from. After that, they sped up and chased after her. Sensing that two Numas were approaching quickly behind her, Su Li, who deliberately slowed down, calmed down her fluctuating eyes, but slightly pursed her lips with imperceptible bitterness. At this time and place, she met the two of them. She knew that it was not the right time and she should avoid them, but she couldn't control her feet after all. "Fellow Taoist, please wait." A familiar and somewhat cold voice came into her ears. Su Li took a deep breath and turned around. Her cold face suddenly became gentle and soft. Her long and narrow eyes narrowed, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. A chuckle came from under the black veil. "The wind and sand are all over the sky. Why do you stop me?" She was used to showing people with coldness, but she didn't know what kind of touching charm she pretended to be this time. For a moment, Fong Yuan and Su Buwang were both absent-minded. "She is really a fairy sister," Su Buwang muttered to himself. Su Li was reincarnated, so there was no blood connection. He didn't realize that the woman in front of him was the mother he had been looking for, and he didn't recognize that she was the female senior who gave him benefits for no reason in Han sect. With only the all-spirits method, as long as Su Li wanted, no one would know her real identity. Fong Yuan was absent-minded, but he was disappointed, not because of the beauty under the black veil. He once had some expectations in his heart. She had something to do with the Yin-Yang region. Maybe. But this woman's temperament was not similar to her at all, which made his hope disappear instantly. Thinking of this, Fong Yuan retracted his gaze, held his fist and said calmly, "Sorry to bother you. I just saw you walking alone here, so I am a little curious." Su Li chuckled and said, "Indeed, the Yin-Yang region is not a safe place. I am also worried. If you don't mind, how about going with me?" Fong Yuan immediately frowned and was about to refuse, but Su Buwang jumped out and said, "Of course. It's inconvenient for elder sister to be outside alone, so it's better to have two people to take care of me." Su Li didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she heard what Su Buwang called her, but she covered her mouth and smiled on the surface. "Thank you, little brother." Su Buwang blushed and scratched his head. Fong Yuan turned his head helplessly. Since Su Buwang agreed and the other party also thanked him, he couldn't say anything more. In this way, the three of them set off together. After walking for half a day, Fong Yuan looked up at the scorching sun that seemed to never set. When he just took out the map to compare, he found that his hand was empty and the map had been taken by Su Li. His eyes were cold and he was about to say something, but another more delicate map fell into his hand. The map fell into his hand. "How about using this map, child?" A delicate voice came. Fong Yuan looked down and glanced at it. His expression was slightly relaxed. "Your map is indeed more accurate. But next time, please tell me in advance, so as not to cause misunderstanding." Su Li raised her eyebrows. After so many years, Fong Yuan was still a blockhead. Seeing that the atmosphere was not very good, Su Buwang quickly stood up to smooth things over. Sister, don't lower yourself to Uncle Fong's level. He is a blockhead, and he doesn't know how to cherish women. If he offends you, please forgive him. Ha. Su Buwang. Fong Yuan looked a little annoyed. It seems that I have been too indulgent to you recently. I have to change my practice plan. Su Buwang looked frightened, and Su Li immediately chuckled. Fong Yuan realized that there were outsiders on the scene, and it was not appropriate to teach Su Buwang a lesson. While feeling slightly sorry in his heart, he couldn't help but ask, Miss, what are you laughing at? Nothing. Su Li flipped the hair on her forehead, turned her head, and revealed the black and purple lotus mark at the corner of her eyebrows. She whispered, I just think that the relationship between you and your uncle and nephew is really good. Fong Yuan was stunned and did not answer. Just at that moment, he noticed a trace of sincere envy from that sentence. Maybe the woman in front of him was not as unrestrained as she looked. Let's go. We can enter the Yinyang region in a day and a half. Fong Yuan said. Although his words were still emotionless, his tone was much more relaxed, which surprised Su Buwang greatly. What happened just now? Su Li squinted and smiled, and then she followed him. Although he was still a blockhead, his mind was still as meticulous as before. 24 hours. Su Buwang lay and counted the time with his fingers. He licked his dry lips and said weakly, but his voice was hoarse. Uncle, why haven't we arrived yet? I'm dying. No matter how powerful Tianhe was, Su Buwang's cultivation was too low, and he couldn't protect it for a long time. Fong Yuan was anxious. He clenched the map in his hand and frowned. The map mark is clearly here. Why is there no entrance? Su Li walked gently to Su Buwang and suddenly held his hand. Su Buwang was shocked and wanted to withdraw his hand. Although he was optimistic, he didn't relax his vigilance at all. But with Su Li's cultivation, he couldn't escape if she wanted to catch him. The next moment, a cold pneuma flowed into the tendons and meridians along his wrist, and instantly smoothed out the burning pain and heat in his body. His dry lips also quickly became moist. Su Buwang stopped withdrawing his hand and sat up energetically. Sister, what did you inject into my body? I feel much more comfortable. I was wondering how you could resist the extreme yang fire poison with ordinary cultivation. It turns out that there is a treasure in your body. As Su Li said, she looked at Fong Yuan, whose face became unkind again, and her tone became more unkind. Although your treasure is a protective treasure, the effect of low-grade extreme yang fire poison is very limited. This guy is also a taciturn person. The fire poison in his body is stagnant and has burned his internal organs, but he doesn't say a word. If I find it a little later, it will affect his foundation. Fong Yuan's face changed slightly when he heard the words. He didn't have time to study the map anymore. He walked to Su Buwang in a few steps and grabbed his other hand. After a while, he suddenly showed shame and self-blame. I was careless. He stared at Su Buwang's face. Silly boy, why didn't you say it was painful? Su Buwang smiled awkwardly. I didn't know the consequences were so serious. I didn't know the consequences would be so serious. Besides, it's not that painful. Compared with those years in Shengtian Shrine, this pain was really nothing. Fong Yuan's eyes darkened. Although he understood Su Buwang's meaning, he didn't know how to answer and could only be silent. After a while, he raised his head and looked at Su Li with apologetic eyes. I'm sorry. I wronged you again. Su Li rolled her eyes. Child, you wronged me many times along the way, right? You men are still too careless in taking care of children. You brought him to the Yinyang region at such a young age. You are really careless. I'm not young. Su Buwang sat in the middle and protested, I'm more than 1,000 years old. Sister, you look younger than me. I like this sentence. Su Li smiled sweetly and slightly raised her lips. Remember to say more nice words in the future. I have some good things here that I am reluctant to use. Maybe if you make me happy, I will give them all to you. Su Buwang's face turned red again. He was really not good at dealing with female practitioners, especially the one in front of him was very beautiful. Since Brother Buwang is fine for the time being, don't worry too much. After confirming Su Buwang's situation again, Su Li said to Fang Yuan, in my opinion, extreme yin generates yang, and extreme yang generates yin. Maybe it is related to the alternation of sun and moon and the time. We might as well wait for another 24 hours. Maybe it won't be so long before we see the change. Fang Yuan nodded, that's the only way. The atmosphere was silent for a while, but Fang Yuan was thinking about the healing method used by the masked woman just now. The treasure of Tianhe was indeed not good at defending against the fire poison of extreme yang, but it was also a protective treasure. It was definitely not as weak as the woman said. The woman did not show her cultivation along the way, but her healing method alone showed that she was by no means an ordinary person. Is there such a person in the holy sect of Qingshui Circle? Did the Grand Elder of Tiyun House make a new breakthrough after I left the sect? The breath of the woman in front of me is young. She is definitely not an old person. It's weird. After thinking about it, Fang Yuan hesitated for a long time and finally couldn't help asking. Girl, I have a question to ask, but I don't know if I should ask. Since you know it's presumptuous, why do you still ask? Fang Yuan blinked and was a little confused. Su Buwang had a hard time holding back his laughter. Uncle Fang was such a proud person, but there were times when he was defeated. Fortunately, he remembered that his practice plan was still controlled by Fang Yuan in time, so he didn't laugh out loud. Time passed by the 10th hour in a strange silence. Su Li suddenly narrowed her eyes. She stood up and looked at the side with his back to the sun. Sister, what's wrong? Su Buwang was confused and followed her to look, but there was nothing there. After 3 breaths, Fang Yuan finally looked slightly serious. He stood beside Su Li and said in a deep voice, Girl, your 5 senses are so sharp. Your cultivation should be above mine. Su Li's eyes flashed. Child, you flatter me. I just, come here. Fang Yuan's eyes were stern. Please take care of Buwang, girl. Then, before Su Li said anything, he rushed out with the white light of the flying sword in an instant. Su Li helplessly protected Su Buwang, who was still confused. I have said that my cultivation is above yours. You men really like to show off. The next moment, a huge and ferocious shadow rose from the ground in front of him. Su Buwang opened his eyes in horror. He finally understood what they meant. What the hell was that? Chapter 542. I smell the smell of a living person. The black shadow finally stretched out its body completely. It was a huge black tree with a height of dozens of meters, which shrouded Su Li and Su Buwang in a shadow. Suddenly, a bright sword light lit up out of thin air and penetrated the back of the black tree. Fang Yuan, who was hiding behind the black tree, changed his face slightly. He clearly stabbed it, but why did it feel like he stabbed in the air? There are still little bugs who dare to attack me. Hundreds of distorted human faces suddenly appeared on the giant tree, and thousands of black eyes opened at the same time. Su Buwang was so disgusted that he almost vomited. Sister, what is this? It's so ugly. As soon as the words came out, the human faces who were still looking for Fang Yuan stopped, and immediately all their eyes fell on Su Buwang. Su Buwang was stunned. He didn't know why his mind suddenly went blank, and he couldn't move. Idiot, run away. Fang Yuan's sound transmission exploded crazily in his ears, but his body felt tight under his feet because of the flaw in the sound transmission this time. He had been entangled by a black vine. The next moment, the vine swung fiercely, boom. Fang Yuan smashed into the desert like a meteor. Uncle Fang. Su Buwang, who came back to his sense, saw this scene, and his face suddenly changed wildly. Before he rushed out, he felt that his body was light, and he was already in the air. Boom! The vines where he originally stood dispersed, and there was a huge pit. Su Buwang suddenly broke into a cold sweat. Little bug, how dare you say that I'm ugly? The ghost's unique voice came from hundreds of mouths, and countless black vines shot at him. Even if the cold breath hadn't touched him, he couldn't help but tremble. Uncle Fong. Su Buwang's strength was still too weak. In front of such a monster, he could only wait for death helplessly. Seeing that he couldn't avoid it, he was still worried about the safety of Fong Yuan. Suddenly, he vaguely heard a cold snort. The dense black vines instantly stopped at the same time, and the face tree's sight fell on Su Li, who had no sense of existence all the time. However, with just one look, he was instantly horrified. How could it be? Lord Hong Baizhu is still alive. Rumble. The gigantic human face tree suddenly began to dig madly into the ground. At this moment, he was even vaguely regretting his arrogance in revealing his true form. It was too troublesome to escape now. Su Li watched the human face tree escape with calm eyes. The bloody tears in her eyes disappeared. Master, I want to eat. Su Li narrowed her eyes slightly. I'll give you 3 breaths. You scared my son Su Buwang. He shouldn't be alive. Do you know? I understand. Sensing the evil spirit in Su Li's words, the little girl retreated with trepidation. After 3 breaths, the pneuma of the face tree that had escaped into the ground disappeared as expected. The little girl didn't run around and returned to Zhang Lei's cave. The aura has become even more annoying. On the other side of Zhang Lei's cave, Su Bai touched his hungry and shriveled stomach and sighed. Sister, I want to eat delicious food too. Escaped? Su Buwang blinked. Although he didn't understand what happened, it was not difficult to guess that the escape of the face tree must have something to do with this sister who had never been willing to reveal her name. By the way, Uncle Fong. With no time to think, Su Buwang immediately rushed to the place where Fong Yuan was smashed and pushed away the hot sand with both hands. Su Li came close and made a gesture. Suddenly, a large piece of sand rolled aside. The sand rolled aside, revealing Fong Yuan in it. Su Buwang quickly picked up Fong Yuan with difficulty, and his face turned red. Damn it, Uncle Fong is very thin. Why is he so heavy? It's because your physical body is too weak. Brother Su, let me do it. Su Buwang felt his hands were light. When he saw the weak woman on the opposite side picked up the unconscious Fong Yuan with one hand, he couldn't help but be a little confused. For the first time, he doubted whether the practice plan Uncle Fong made for him was too little. Su Li gently put Fong Yuan on the ground. After a little examination, her tightly knitted eyebrows suddenly relaxed. It's not a big problem. He was poisoned with a little ghost poison. With the self-healing ability of his physical body, he will wake up soon. If he hadn't been worried about you, he wouldn't have exposed his flaws. Hearing what she said, Su Buwang breathed a sigh of relief, but he couldn't help blaming himself. He whispered bitterly, Uncle Fong gave me the treasure for protection. I'm really useless. Su Li chuckled and couldn't help touching Su Buwang's hair. She said softly, You are still young. I can't blame you for this. Since you understand the importance of strength, you should work hard to practice. Don't let Uncle Fong down. Do you understand? Su Buwang froze in place and obediently let Su Li touch his hair. He didn't dare to move. This feeling, he had never felt it. If Mother was by my side, would she also often touch my hair, whisper to me, show concern for my well-being, and give me advice? Thinking about it, Su Buwang felt that his eyes were a little wet. Suddenly, he was embarrassed and lowered his head. It's good to see you grow up healthily. Su Li thought secretly. She smiled and withdrew her hand. I cast a lightning spell on your Uncle Fong. Carry him on your back. It's time for us to enter the Yinyang region. Su Buwang wiped his eyes without a trace. He looked up at the direction pointed by Su Li and couldn't help but be surprised. There was a twisted crack there. With his eyesight, he could vaguely see the appearance of the city inside. When did it appear? Su Buwang thought a little confusedly. He carried Fong Yuan on his back and followed Su Li into the crack. After a short period of darkness, Fong Yuan frowned and moved his eyebrows. He suddenly opened his eyes and straightened up like a corpse coming back to life. Su Buwang, who was watching on the side, jumped up in fright. Although his expression was exaggerated, he was much calmer. Uncle Fong, you finally wake up? The sister is right. It's only been 4 hours. Fong Yuan looked at Su Buwang carefully. Seeing that he had no injury, he was relieved. Then he had time to look around. It was a well-decorated room. Where is this place? Of course, it's the Yinyang region. Su Buwang sat down again. Uncle Fong, after you were sent flying by the ugly monster, the elder sister and the ugly monster fought so fiercely that the sky fell and the earth cracked, and the sun and moon lost their light. Speak human language. Fong Yuan was so angry that he laughed. This guy almost died, but he still had time to joke here. Just by looking at his expression, he knew that this guy was talking nonsense again. Su Buwang smiled embarrassedly and said, "Sure enough, nothing can escape your eyes." He scratched his head. "I don't know the specific process. I just heard a cold hum, and then the ugly monster dug the ground and ran away crazily. I really don't understand. Uncle, do you have any idea?" Ran away? Fong Yuan's eyes were slightly cold, and he was more afraid of the woman in black in his heart. He was born in a noble family and had a wide range of knowledge. Although he didn't know it this time, he also understood what he had encountered. And that woman could actually scare away a ghost with a cold hum? No matter how he thought about it, there was something very unusual in it. Thinking of this, Fong Yuan glanced at the room. But he didn't see anyone else. The sister went to inquire about the news. Her purpose is actually the same as ours. She came to the Linli building. Su Buwang said thoughtlessly. Fong Yuan was shocked, and the flame buried in the bottom of his heart couldn't help burning again. After thinking for a moment, Fong Yuan was about to get out of bed. At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open. "I advise you to lie down for a while. Although the human face tree is not a very powerful ghost, it will be trouble if you encounter the ghost poison. It's always right to be careful." Su Li changed into a more spacious black robe, which covered her graceful body. She no longer looked outstanding. Fong Yuan's eyes darkened, and he cupped his fists. "Just now, thank you." "You don't need to thank me." Su Li sat down at the table and poured a pot of tea for herself. "We agreed when we traveled together that we could take care of each other. Now I just did what I should do." Fong Yuan withdrew his observation with some disappointment. In the reincarnation mirror, he stayed with Su Li all the time, so he knew all Su Li's little habits and preferences very well. Pouring tea with her right hand, she always used to use her left hand. "Since we have arrived in the Yinyang region, I will come straight to the point." Su Li took a sip of tea and looked up. "What I came here for is simple. I heard that the base camp of the Linli building is in the Yinyang region. I am really curious about the owner of the Linli building who dares to do such a risky thing under the nose of so many holy sections. There is only one owner of the Linli building." Fong Yuan stared at Su Li. "Since you are so interested in it, it is impossible that you don't know the identity of the owner." Su Li covered her mouth and chuckled. She said carelessly, "Yes, I know. But that person is dead, isn't he? So he must be the new owner." Fong Yuan's eyes became serious, but Su Li refuted. "Why? Do you still think that person is still alive? Do you think it is possible that he is targeted by so many holy sects?" Fong Yuan was silent. Even though he knew that what the woman said in front of him was true, he still didn't want to believe it. If he believed it, everything he did would be meaningless. "I say, Uncle Fong, sister, who are you talking about?" Su Buwang, who was eating melon seeds aside, finally interjected and asked. He didn't think about his mother at all. In his consciousness, the image of his mother was still the maid that Ling Li said. Even if she had a relationship with Uncle Fong, it didn't mean anything. It just meant that his mother must be very beautiful. Otherwise, even the Emperor of Evil would be tempted and give birth to him with his mother. Of course, it is the owner of the Linli building. Su Li took a deep look at Su Buwang, and then turned to look at Fong Yuan, who was a little impatient, and said, "Little brother, your understanding of the Qingshui circle is too low. If you have time, ask your Uncle Fong more. There are only advantages and no disadvantages. Do you know?" Oh, being taught a lesson again, Su Buwang didn't feel disgusted at all. He scratched his head and thought of the thing that his head was touched before. Fang Yuan faintly breathed a sigh of relief. After a moment of silence, he said, Buwang and I come here to find someone. If we find her, we will leave. What should the girl do? Chapter 543. Of course, I want to join them. Su Li turned the teacup in her hand and said leisurely, I have nothing to do recently. It's rare for something to arouse my interest. Besides, if I don't join them, how can I meet the current owner of the Linli building? Fang Yuan habitually frowned slightly. This woman was too thoughtful and her words were mixed. It was hard to understand her. However, his intuition told him that it might not be a bad thing for this woman to join the Linli building. So, we have the same purpose for the time being. Before we find the Linli building, what do you think? Fang Yuan looked up at the woman in front of him. His eyes were naturally a little cold, which was not as clear as before. Su Li's eyes were full of gentleness. She gently put down the teacup and said with a smile, That's right. As she said, she waved her hand casually. A black vortex appeared out of thin air, and then a handsome young man in yellow clothes came out. As soon as he came out, he trembled and knelt at the table. He said in a panic, Forgive me. I will tell you everything. Su Li ignored him and said to Fang Yuan with a smile, I just went out and found that the city was really chaotic. There were even people who stole things. So, I simply caught them and asked them. The young man in yellow stared at him. When did he steal things? He just got the order to monitor the foreign practitioners in the Yinyang region. But before he entered the inn, he blacked out and didn't know anything. I see. After experiencing the Jianyang desert, Fang Yuan's vigilance was reduced a lot. He didn't doubt Su Li's words. He immediately nodded and said, Since you caught them, you can interrogate them. I will wait and see. Su Li leaned on the table and raised her eyebrows slightly. Young man, what's your name? The young man in yellow clothes was stunned. He looked away evasively and stammered, My surname is Li, young man. Su Li interrupted the young man in yellow clothes with a smile and said lightly, I will give you another chance. If you lie again, don't blame me for being cruel. You should know that the soul-searching skill is the most abundant in the cultivation circle. It's not easy for me to be kind, but you are not willing to cooperate. You're really... I am Guofeng Yu. The young man in yellow immediately knelt straight and shouted loudly. Su Buwang almost laughed out loud. In this day and age, there weren't many people who could be so righteous and honest. Nice name. Su Li praised, Little Gua, do you know the division of forces in the cultivation cities in the Yinyang region? If your answer satisfies this servant, I will let you go, and I will naturally not use any tricks. Hearing this, Guofengyo's eyes immediately lit up. Of course I know. I was born in the Yinyang domain, and I've been making a living in Ju City since I was a child. There's no cultivation sect in this city that I don't know. Very good, looks like I've asked the right person. Su Li chuckled. Well, tell me about it. Guofeng Yu was stunned for a moment. He had a lot of information about the various forces in his mind, and he wanted to use the questions he was asked to find out the details of these people. However, the young girl in front of him seemed to be about the same age as him, and her mind was very cunning. She actually let him do as he wished. It's not very good. At such a critical moment, a powerful figure came. It must be for that, Guofeng Yu was very confused. Seeing that Su Li's eyes became more and more unkind, he finally couldn't bear it. He frowned and said, Ju City is very big. Most of the people are desperados. It's very chaotic, but there is order in the chaos. Most practitioners are incorporated by the three forces in Ju City. I heard from my father that the three forces were the Baichuan Mansion, the Morning Soul House, and the Liang Villa about 800 years ago. Later, I don't know what happened. The Baichuan Mansion was suddenly incorporated by another completely strange force. That force is now the head of the three forces, the Linli building. Hearing these three words from a stranger, both Su Li and Fang Yuan's eyes flashed, and they felt relieved at the same time. The information was true. The branch of Ju City is extremely long and narrow, stretching for hundreds of kilometers. The Linli building occupied 60% of it in just 800 years, and the remaining 40% was divided by the Morning Soul House and the Liang Villa. As for other small sects, there are new ones almost every day. The old ones are destroyed, and I don't want to remember them. 800 years ago, Feng Yuan frowned and recalled. At that time, Qingshui Circle was in chaos because of the breaking of the reincarnation mirror. The matter that he and Ling Li trapped and killed 100,000 talents was also known by the senior officials of the sect. Therefore, he was grounded, and it was impossible to judge who could come here to establish a force at that time. It turns out that the Linli building has been established for 800 years. Su Li thought, who on earth will persevere to fight against the holy sects for me? She glanced at Feng Yuan secretly. According to Feng Yuan's temperament, it was indeed possible. But, since Feng Yuan appeared here, it must not be there. Then, coldness flashed in Su Li's eyes, which made Guifengyo's heart beat fast. He couldn't even take care of his son well. He let him wander about and suffer all kinds of grievances. The evil emperor was really powerful. Senior, can this lowly one leave now? Guifengyo's careful voice brought Su Li back to reality. We were just talking and you want to leave already? Su Li squinted and smiled. Since you know everything, you should know where the three forces are, right? Well, Guo Fengyu said with some embarrassment, the other two forces are not difficult, but the Linli building. This force has always been very mysterious. Not to mention the gate, even the members of this force can't be seen. Every time they take action, they cover their faces with spells and wear the same clothes. They stroll in the city on weekdays. Even the people selling sesame seed cakes on the roadside may be from the Linli building. How can I know? The more Su Li listened, the colder her eyes were. Feng Yuan also frowned. He thought of a possibility that should not exist at all. Such a heartless person clearly drew a line with the reincarnation mirror as soon as he got the memory. But this force was similar to the Yinma cult in the reincarnation mirror. If it was really as he thought, it was meaningless to come here this time. Instead, it would expose his whereabouts to the Shengtian shrine. It's really troublesome. Su Li said softly and pointed at Guifengyu. The storage bag on Guifengyo's waist automatically fell off. Guifengyu was stunned and then turned pale with fright. He immediately stood up and wanted to grab it back. But he was no match for Su Li. His hands grasped nothing. You young man, your cultivation is not high and your mind is very simple. But you can live safe and sound until now. Su Li squinted and smiled. It seemed that the soul mark on the storage bag did not exist. She opened it slowly and said, let me see which force you come from. It's over. Guifengyo's eyes were blank and he collapsed on the ground. Ding, clang. 2 jade tokens fell on the table. One was green and the other was white. The two words, Linli, on the back were clearly visible. Su Li raised her eyebrows and said in a teasing tone, young man, it turns out that you are from the Linli building, the first force in Jucheng. I'm sorry. With a smile in her eyes, Su Li pretended to be flustered and said, then, I offended the Linli building. Should I kill them? Guifengyu squatted and covered his head. He shouted in fear, don't kill me. I finally became an official disciple of the Linli building yesterday. My life is just... Su Buwang approached him and reluctantly withdrew his hand from Guifengyo's shoulder. Looking at Guifengyu, who was scared and twitching, he said helplessly, stop shaking. Don't you see that I am teasing you? You are such a good person. How can you kill innocent people? I'm not a good person. Su Li refuted. She turned to look at Feng Yuan, who was thinking, and said with a smile, fellow practitioner Feng, are you interested in playing a play with me? Feng Yuan was excited. A moment later. Brother Su, how about my dress? Su Li adjusted her hair and looked at Su Buwang with gentleness that the latter could not perceive in her eyes. Well? Su Buwang looked at the girl who changed into an emerald dress in front of him. On the top of the cyan translucent curtain, A pair of pure black eyes were as clear as water without any impurities. After her slightly messy hair, her waterfall-like black hair danced freely. She was really a budding girl who was pure and beautiful. She looked much more immature than him. Su Buwang couldn't help but twitch his mouth. "Sister, you are more beautiful than Uncle Fong," he couldn't help but continue. The beautiful sister who suddenly appeared not only had a higher cultivation than Uncle Fong, but also had a way to keep her appearance. Compared with Uncle Fong, who had been through many vicissitudes of life, she was much less sad and angry. Comparing oneself with others, Su Buwang sighed. Fong Yuan's eyelids twitched and he said calmly, "Shall we go or not?" Su Buwang shivered and said hurriedly, "Let's go. You always walk in front. Now you are the one with the highest cultivation in the whole team. You can take 2 siblings with weak cultivation to cross the Jianyang Desert." Su Li covered her mouth and chuckled, "Forget it. Fellow practitioner Fong, don't care about your nephew. You have to perform well. If you expose yourself, all our requests will be ruined." "Of course I can tell." Fong Yuan nodded expressionlessly, but he was a little unwilling in his heart. However, his image was really not suitable for him to pretend to be young and seek refuge in the Linli building. Fortunately, there was Bong. Thinking of this, Fong Yuan was silent for a moment and couldn't help but transmit the sound in silence, "Miss, please take care of Buwang's safety." Su Li's eyes were shining and she chuckled, "I will." Su Buwang looked at the two of them and scratched his head. "What are you talking about?" Guofeng Yu stood in front of the inn and listened to the 3 people talking and laughing. She thought desperately in her heart, "I have just become an official disciple. Am I going to betray the sect now? Here it is." Guofeng Yu opened the door cleverly and warmly invited Fong Yuan and the other 2 people to walk into the courtyard. She said incessantly, "Senior, the Linli building is definitely the best place for you to take care of your orphan. I know that if the Linli building hadn't adopted me as an off-staff disciple in the early years, I would have starved to death on the street. How could I live to this day?" Fong Yuan nodded gently and looked back to see 2 faces full of panic. His eyelids kept twitching. Chapter 544. 34 Chinese Network, in 1 second wonderful pop-up window free reading. "Why are you so noisy?" An old farmer carrying a hoe came out of the seemingly ordinary farmyard. Seeing the young man in yellow, the old man's angry face eased a little. "It turns out to be Guofeng Yu. Today you." In the middle of the words, the old man finally noticed Fong Yuan, who was extraordinary behind Guofeng Yu. The old man's original casual expression was immediately restrained, and his eyes were full of vigilance. "You are very unfamiliar." Guofeng Yu smiled embarrassedly. "Old Kai, didn't you ask me to monitor the outsider?" The old man responded, "Put down the hoe, and put it on the side of the door." He made a gesture and said solemnly, "Your Excellency, do you want to talk in the house?" "Of course." Fong Yuan nodded, and then turned around and said, "You 2 wait outside the house. Don't run around." "Yes, Uncle Fong." Su Li and Su Buwang said yes. Fong Yuan's eyes flashed a touch of helplessness. He turned around and walked into the house with the farmer. Seeing this, Guofeng Yu couldn't help but worry. He was about to secretly transmit the sound to the farmer, but Su Li's leisurely voice came into his ears first. "Young man, we mean no harm. But if we have to kill him because of what you said, it will not be good." Guofeng Yu held her breath, and the sound was stuck in her throat. Although old Kai had joined the Linli building for many years, he usually made a living by planting spiritual rice. His cultivation was probably not high. Thanks to his care over these years, Guofeng Yu couldn't hurt him. "It's really terrible." Guofeng Yu sighed in her heart. Old Kai was more important. The furnishings in the house were very old, just like an ordinary old farmer's house. But the moment Fong Yuan walked in, he noticed that it was not simple. In such a chaotic city, it was common for houses to be rebuilt. But the furnishings in the house had not been changed for at least hundreds of years. Impregnable. This word flashed in Fong Yuan's mind, and his eyes were full of light. No wonder Guofeng Yu was a little naive. It turned out that there was a senior guarding him. While thinking, the two had taken their seats respectively. Old Kai poured a cup of tea for Fang Yuan and coughed twice. You are a guest from afar, so I treat you with courtesy. But it is not honorable to threaten a half-grown child. Senior, you're wrong. Fang Yuan shook his head and said, unusual times call for unusual things. I have no choice. Please forgive me. Old man Kai took a sip of tea and pondered for a moment before continuing, forget it. That child is too naive and this old man is also at fault. Why have you come to the Yin-Yang region? I came to entrust an orphan to you. Fang Yuan said in a low voice, I offended a force. It's not convenient to take them with me. I only beg you to take them in. If you want any reward, just mention it. I will never refuse. Fellow Taoist, your surname is Fang. The old man surnamed Kai thought for a while on his wrinkled face, but he didn't ask his name. He just said, my surname is Kai, and my first name is Ji. I can accept the two children on behalf of the Linli building. People in the Yin-Yang region never ask about their origins. You can rest assured. Hearing the elder's words, Fang Yuan was surprised and hesitated. Everything came too easily, so he was a little worried. The old man chuckled. You must be curious. Yes. I heard from friend Gua that the Linli building is very mysterious, but now it is so easy to accept outsiders. It's completely different from my imagination. Fang Yuan told the truth, and the old man was a little relieved. He shook his head and said, I believe in my own vision. Although my status in the Linli building is not high, it is not a problem to arrange two people. What's more, it's a special period now. We need manpower. Fang Yuan raised his eyebrows and said, special period? Old man Kai smiled and showed his yellow teeth. He suddenly looked a little treacherous. It's not a secret in the big forces in the Yin-Yang region. You can go with me 2 days later. Those boys and girls can also go there to see the world. Then you will know why I am so easy to talk to. Fang Yuan frowned, but he still nodded. So, I will wait for a few days. Feng Yu, come here. Freshly baked spiritual potatoes. On the ridge of the spiritual field, Su Buwang excitedly ran to Guofeng Yu with hot spiritual potatoes in his hands. Guofeng Yu rolled her eyes and snorted, you steal the spiritual potatoes from old Kai again. Be careful that he will hit you with a hoe. I am not afraid. Uncle Feng is here. Besides, there is my sister. Guofeng Yu glanced at Su Li, who had peeled a spiritual potato, and immediately smiled. As the saying goes, the law does not punish the masses. No matter how powerful old Kai was, he couldn't beat them together. I haven't even settled the matter of you threatening me last time. You want to bribe me? No way. Guofeng Yu had a look of disdain on her face, but her hands disobediently took the spirit potato and began to eat it while giggling. The grudges from a few days ago had long been tossed beyond the highest heavens. Ho ho, unexpectedly, the two boys get along well. Seeing the scene from a distance, old Kai smiled with some relief. I only care about protecting him, but I forget that he even has no friends of the same age. Now he has 2 more friends, which can make up for my mistake. Fang Yuan could only nod silently after hearing that. Old Kai thought that he was worried about the enemy, so he just sighed and said nothing. What? You have no parents since you were a child? Su Buwang spat out the skin of the spiritual potato in his mouth and smirked. Although I have a father, it's better than not having one. I was brought up by an old servant who sweeps the floor. Later, the old servant died. I was lonely and was despised by those people all day long. Compared to me, you still have old man Kai. Guofeng Yu stared at him and said, you are so miserable? Although old Kai looks fierce on the surface, I have nothing to say about him. Isn't that right? Su Buwang said with some disappointment. He didn't notice that the spiritual potato in Su Li's hand had become a pile of black powder. What about your Uncle Feng? Who is he? Guofeng Yu asked curiously. I think he is very good to you. I don't know. Su Buwang scratched his head. I met him suddenly. Maybe we hit it off. I followed him everywhere and felt much better than staying at home. I still don't know your name. How old are you this year? Me, Su Buwang, 1019 years old this year. You are 1000 years old? I am only 700 years old. Nice to meet you. Ha, what are you doing? Well, I will accept you as my younger brother. The two young men played on the ridge of the field, without any self-awareness as practitioners. Old Kai couldn't help laughing. Younger brother, you said that I overprotected Feng Yu. I think you are almost the same. Feng Yuan's face darkened. Did this guy forget the purpose of coming here? Suddenly, he fixed his eyes and saw the black powder falling around Su Li. He was slightly confused. What was she doing? Well, younger brother, it's almost time. Go back and have a rest. It's time for us to set off. Old Kai stood up and patted the dust on his body. Then he turned around and walked back. After a while, they changed into the unique uniforms of the Linli building. Each of them had a bamboo hat in their hands. Feng Yuan touched the familiar pattern on the bamboo hat. His eyes were slightly bright. It was exactly the same as the reincarnation mirror. The manager of the Linli building was definitely an acquaintance. The bamboo hat is attached with a tactical matrix. After you put it on, you can cover your face. It was the first time for Guofeng Yu to participate in such an action. She was excited. After hearing that, she became more excited. Old Kai, this is the unique fog-concealing bamboo hat of the Linli building. You have so many. Don't talk nonsense. Put it on quickly. Old Kai became fierce again. Guofeng Yu shrank her neck and quickly put on the bamboo hat. Her face was suddenly covered by a layer of fog. They left the house and walked a few steps along the street. Suddenly, she seemed to feel something. But she didn't look back. She just transmitted the sound to Feng Yuan. Feng Yuan stopped and looked back. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. The original yard was gone. Ho-ho, it seems that you also know about the tactical matrix. It may be a surprise to take you there this time. Old Kai laughed. Feng Yuan shook his head and said, I don't even know what the purpose of the action is. I can't guarantee it. You will know when you go there. Feng Yuan nodded and followed her. The three people behind him walked side by side. Su Li walked on the far left and looked up at the gloomy sky from time to time. Why are there no people on the streets of Jucheng? Su Buwang felt strange. Guofeng Yu shook her head. It's not like this usually. I have never seen it. After walking a few more streets, Su Li looked up more often. What are you looking at, sister? Su Buwang felt a little strange. But he sensed that the mood of the two people in front of him became serious, so he couldn't ask more. Here we are. All of a sudden, Old Kai stopped in the middle of the continent. Guofeng Yu and Su Buwang were stunned. What? Before they asked, the scene in front of them suddenly changed. It turned into a dark red as if the world had changed. All the houses around disappeared, as if they had entered another world. Lord Shenong, you are finally here. A black cloud surged in the distance. When they approached, Su Buwang found that it was a group of people who also wore the costumes of the Linli building. The leading man's voice was a little strange, but it didn't prevent them from hearing it clearly. Lord Zhua and others are all here. Old Kai looked slightly serious under the bamboo hat. It seems that the situation is not good. Let's go there quickly. But after that, the leading man turned around and left without doubting the people behind Old Kai. Guofeng Yu curled her lips. The old man's position in the Linli building is not bad. Old bastard, you have kept it from me for so long. No wonder there are so many misty cloaks. They moved forward. It seemed that there was no direction in this world. The direction was only marked by color. The deeper they went, the closer the color of the ground was to black, and it was sticky like blood that hadn't dried up. This damn place is really uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? Su Buwang was a little confused after hearing Guofeng Yu's words. Why do I feel quite comfortable? Chapter 545. Comfortable? Guofeng Yu glanced at Su Buwang strangely, and the latter immediately smiled awkwardly. Just kidding. When Guofeng Yu turned around, Su Buwang's face slightly darkened. He was not kidding. Even he knew that it was absolutely not a normal phenomenon to feel comfortable in such a strange area. Su Li's white palm brushed the air, and she raised her eyebrows slightly. It was somewhat familiar. The pneuma of the blood stone. Since we are here, I will not hide it from you. Old Kai, who was not far in front, secretly transmitted the sound to everyone. Since 1,000 years ago, the Yin-Yang region has been shrinking, and the reason is this place. We call this place the Bloody Circle. There are two extremes of Yin and Yang in the Yin-Yang region. Yin and Yang contradict each other and maintain a balance. However, 1,000 years ago, the Bloody Circle appeared between the two without warning and broke the absolute balance, causing the Yin-Yang region to be squeezed and constantly shattered. There are also tactical matrix masters in the Yin-Yang region. They speculate that if the development of the Bloody Circle is not curbed, the Yin-Yang region will disappear completely in another 100 years. Whether it was the former Baichuan mansion or the current Linli building, as the pillar of the Yin-Yang region, they naturally have to shoulder the responsibility of destroying the Bloody Circle. Speaking of this, old Kai laughed. Of course, the overall situation will be taken care of by Lord Zhua. What we can do is to try our best to clear the endless blood tide in the Bloody Circle. I see. Fang Yuan nodded, but he only believed 70% in his heart. The man was so respectful to old Kai just now. Old Kai's status was definitely not as low as he described. It was even likely that she was one of the higher-ups of the Linli building. But why didn't he admit it? He glanced at Guo Fengyu and didn't say anything. After 2 days of contact, old Kai knew that Fang Yuan, who was forcibly pulled into the cleaning team, was silent most of the time. So, he didn't care and continued to remind, when you put on these clothes, you can only call each other by a code name. Don't expose your identity. For example, my name is Shinnong. You also think of a code name. Don't expose your identity when we meet later. Codename? Su Buwang scratched his head. His thinking was limited to Shengtian Shrine. If the name related to Shengtian Shrine was exposed, it would not be good. Guo Fengyu smiled and said proudly, "Eldest brother, my code name is Yufeng. I named it by myself. How is it? Is it nice?" Su Buwang rolled his eyes. "It sounds good. I know who you are as soon as I hear it." Guo Fengyu immediately retorted, "It's impossible. No one in the Linli building knows the real identity of old Kai and me. Eldest brother, you can't generalize." I know. Su Buwang thought for a while. "Then I will be called Buhui." Not forgetting was named by that person. How could he not forget his mother? I don't believe it. I am willing to leave, give up the identity of Shengtian Shrine, and wander around the world to find the trace of my mother. I will never regret it. Thinking of this, Su Buwang didn't say much. Su Li was silent for a moment and said softly, "Call me Qing Shui. Qing Shui, when I take over Qing Shui Circle, the world will be your backyard. I will help you get back all the sufferings you have suffered." Qing Shui? Good spirit, good name. Buhui, your sister's name is much better than yours. Old man Kai laughed and turned around. "Brother Fang, are you the only one left?" Fang Yuan stared at Su Li and blurted out 2 words. "Fang Cun." Fang Cun. Isn't the Yin-Yang region the place of Fang Cun? Old man Kai sighed with emotion. It seemed that he recalled the past, and his tone was inexplicably heavy. Then he hurried on and stopped talking. Speaking of which, Uncle Fang has never revealed his real name. Is he called Fang Cun? Su Buwang thought in his heart and became distressed again. I don't even know the surname of my new sister. Even the 2 characters of Qing Shui are likely to be fake. Alas, why do practitioners like to hide things these days? After the group walked across a blood-red river, they finally saw a large patch of dark clouds in the distance. The sounds of intense fighting reached their ears, but the situation was covered by the blood, so they could not see clearly. Behind the contact point, the several rows of the Black Army could be clearly distinguished. From afar, they looked like many thick black lines that were neat and uniform. Old man Kai took everyone into the last row of the Black Army and reminded everyone solemnly, "We are in the 3rd sequence. 3 hours later, we will go to the battlefield to kill monsters. Get ready." As for the boys, you just hide behind and protect yourselves. Do you understand? Guofengyu took the lead to agree. But if one saw his excited face through the bamboo hat, it was obvious that he was not going to obey. He knew about the bloody circle and the current situation was critical. Unfortunately, Old Man Kai had always been unwilling to take him here. Now that he finally got the opportunity, how could he not go in and have a look? Su Buwang seemed to be much calmer. After all, Shengtian Shrine was the top holy sect. Even if he was an invisible person who was disliked, his father was the Emperor of Evil, who had a high status and was second only to the Palace Lord. He had experienced much more than Guofengyu. Since the Bloody Circle is the biggest hidden danger in the Inyang region, there are 3 forces in Ju City. Why are you the only ones here? Feng Yuan glanced at the black clothes in the distance and couldn't help but ask. Before Old Man Kai answered, there was a hearty voice next to him. Are you a casual practitioner who has just joined the force? There is more than one bloody circle. There are many small bloody circles. Our Linli building will resist the largest one, and the rest will be handed over to the Liang Villa and the Morning Soul House. This is a clear division of labor. At this point, the burly man who spoke tilted his bamboo hat to the side and winked a little. Old Man Shenong, you really like to hide. This time, the bloody circle is in a critical situation, and you actually bring a senior. Old Man Kai frowned and said lightly, it's just a coincidence. How can you see that he is a senior? Ha! The burly man pointed at the bamboo hat. Although this thing can block the spiritual awareness, my eyes are not broken. This brother has a calm temperament and doesn't panic in the face of danger. At first glance, I can tell that you have seen the world. On the contrary, these turnips are all young. Are they the juniors that Old Man Shenong brought to see the world? Feng Yuan turned his head and saw that Su Li had hidden behind Su Buwang. She was timid and very scared. Feng Yuan couldn't help but twitch his eyebrows and feet. He couldn't help but think of her again. Could it be that beautiful women all had superb acting skills? The new generation excels the old. The cause of fighting against the bloody circle always needs to be inherited by the descendants. Old Man Shenong, I really think highly of you this time. In the past, when I saw you come alone, I really thought that you were a loner who only knew how to farm. Old Man Kai's eyes were full of anger. Taizhan, if I didn't know that you are a straightforward boy, I would send you down the mountain. My food supply is running out. Oh, don't. Please calm down. I have so many descendants to raise. The food supply can't be cut off. Seeing Tieshan's fear, Guofengyu almost laughed out loud. She had seen Uncle Taizhan. He was straightforward and didn't like to cover his face. So, he had revealed his true identity early. Uncle Tieshan's real name is Wang Taizhan. Guofengyu transmitted the sound to Su Buwang and Su Li in a low voice. Uncle Taizhan is an excellent person. He has a good wife and many children and grandchildren at home. His family style is very good. When I was wandering in the early years, I even asked for food. That family was the only one who didn't drive me away and took me in for a meal. They also wanted to adopt me, but I was stubborn at that time and didn't agree. Then I met Old Man Kai. Su Buwang patted Guofengyu's bamboo hat and said sadly, don't talk about your shameful past in the future. Just like me, I will never say that I was chased by people until I had nowhere to go and even disguised as a woman. Big brother, didn't you say it? While everyone was laughing and talking, Su Li didn't say a word. She spread out her divine awareness and shuttled back and forth under many black bamboo hats. The tactical matrix on the bamboo hat was of the 10th grade, which was very good. But for her, it was nothing. The battle lines stretched for hundreds of miles. Su Li's divine awareness didn't stop until it reached the center of the Black Army. Finally, she saw a man with a cyan fox mask. He was tall and steady like a mountain. Su Li frowned and her divine awareness stayed above the man. The tactical matrix on the mask is more than the 12th grade. I can't see through it unless I touch it myself. At this moment, a man in a black bamboo hat came over and gave a jade slip. Lord Zhua, Lord Sin sent a message from the front line. The man with the cyan fox mask took it. Su Li saw this scene with her divine awareness and thought. It turns out that he is Zhua. The mask is very similar to Ling Qinglan's mask. But Ling Qinglan is still in Jiuzhou region and her soul has just recovered. So, it is definitely not him. Who is the one with the code name Sin? After thinking for a moment, the man with the cyan fox mask had crushed the jade slip in his hand. His voice was lost through the mask and was a bit weird, but it still couldn't hide the determination in his words. Since there is one more Xueji, Sin can't deal with it. Let the second and third sequences go in at the same time to force back the blood tide and open the way for me. I will go in person. As soon as the words came out, the messenger was so shocked that his bamboo hat fell to the ground. Lord, you can't do that. If you leave, there will be no commander. The morale of the army will be in chaos. When the blood tide rushes into Ju City, the people in Yinyang region will be in misery and suffering. The man with the cyan fox mask stopped and was surrounded by cyan luster. Su Li immediately recognized the familiar light. Qiu evil skill. This man was Su Qingtan. Could it be him? Su Li's heart fluctuated for a moment, but she soon calmed down. Since she was here, it wouldn't be strange to see anyone. At this moment, the man with the cyan fox mask said again, "How is Luo, who came back a few days ago?" Lord Luo is seriously injured and in a coma. The man with the cyan fox mask took a deep breath and thought for a moment. Then he said in a deep voice, "Send a message to all the golden stewards to gather masters to go to the depths of the bloody realm to help. There are many reclusive practitioners in Yinyang region. I don't believe that they won't stand out if they know that Yinyang region is about to be destroyed." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.